3.
Good evening and welcome to Full Council. I would first like to move to agenda item 1, welcome and safety information. Welcome to today's Full Council meeting. Welcome also to members of the public who are watching this via our YouTube channel. Councillors, please be mindful of the etiquette guidance that has been issued, which will ensure that you can be viewed and understood by members of the public watching from home. May I please remind everybody to behave with due courtesy, tolerance and respect for one another's views and conduct yourself in a reasonable manner. There will be 2 methods of voting at this meeting. Most votes will be a named vote and will take place by way of a roll call. Councillors have been provided with guidance on how to help the roll call take place as smoothly as possible. For one vote, I will ask, can I take that as agreed, and wait for any responses. I will then ask if anyone wishes to vote against. Councillors should only indicate if they do not agree. Now we move to the agenda. Agenda item 2, apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillor English. Are there any other apologies for absence? Thank you. I would now like to move to agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Can I ask please whether any councillors have any interest to declare regarding the items on today's agenda? Thank you very much. I would now like to move to agenda item 4, minutes from the previous meeting. I move the minutes of the previous council held on the 12th of January, 23rd of February and the 2nd of March 2021 as a correct record. There has been a correction to the voting record of the Conservative Revenue Amendment at the 23rd of February budget meeting. The pack will have the previous version, however. The updated version can be found online. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Can I take that the minutes are agreed? Are there any votes against? Thank you very much. Thank you. I would now like to move to agenda item 5, Lord Mayor's business. This is the last full council meeting of our council year, with the elections taking place on the 6th of May. There are many councillors standing down, and I wanted to acknowledge their contribution to the city and wish them well for the future. From Labour, previous Lord Mayor Jeff Lovell, Mark Brain, the leader who is Mark Hickman, Estelle Tinknell, Barry Clark, and as well we have Ruth Pickerskill. From the Lib Dem group we have Mark Wright. From the Green group, Charlie Bolton, who was Bristol's first Green group councillor. From the Conservative group, we have Liz Radford and Peter Abraham. I would like to take a minute to highlight the special contribution that Peter Abraham...
My Lord Mayor, you forgot me. I'm standing down too.
No, I know there's... Sorry. There are a raft of people who are standing down. I know your contribution to the city has been special over the years, but we have so many that we didn't want to do a roll call of all the councillors standing down. So we've only highlighted the councillors that the groups have recommended for recommendation at this particular time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to take a minute to highlight the special contribution that Peter Abraham has made to the city. It would be difficult to be able to do justice to speak of Councillor Abraham after such a long service. And I'm sure we all have our own anecdotes of working with him. He was first elected to represent Stockwood Ward in 1966. I just think we need to hold that for a minute because many of us here won't have actually even been born at that time. So I just need to ponder that concept. He stood until 1972, then again on Avon County Council. Then he served for the people of Stoke Bishop from 1983 on this council. In total, he has been an elected member for 52 years. In one local chamber or another, over a 55-year period. He has held the civic office of Lord Mayor 3 times, together with his lovely wife, Pearl. I'm sure we'll hear more details of his contributions and roles within nearly all the council committees and commissions over his service when he undoubtedly returns to the alderman making service, ceremony, which I hope he will allow us to put his name forward for that honour. But until then, I just wanted to highlight his service at this last full council meeting, as we would have done it if he was in the council with us here today. We cannot really do a round of applause on Zoom, but I'm sure you join with me in wishing Peter Abraham best wishes for his retirement and his contribution. Thank you. Peter, did you want to say a couple of words, and we won't put you on the clock, if you would like to just say a couple of words? You're on mute, Peter. Peter, you're on mute, I'm afraid. If you can unmute yourself, then you can say a few words. Hang on, bear with us. Can we unmute him?
I think it is now.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Unlimited time, that's something that in 1966 I would have really enjoyed. But I'm not going to take advantage of those very kind words that you said, my Lord Mayor. It's been a privilege and with great pride that I've represented the council for over 50 years. I can't believe it myself when I sat in those benches in May 1966 that I'd be sort of semi-sat here today. I thank everybody for all they've done and the privileges of being able to serve as Lord Mayor and in various other positions of the council has been absolutely wonderful. And I've learned so much and I wish everybody the best. Can I just say, Bristol is the greatest city in the country. We really make a contribution to all that goes on and we have so much to do. And it is perhaps by working together in partnership that I see the future way forward, because after the pandemic, things will be different and we'll have to work differently. And I love my politics, but I think it's got to be put aside for the benefit of the city that I live in, born in and love. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your contribution. That was wonderful, and it was lovely to see Pearl as well. Okay, I would now like to move on to item 6 on our agenda, which is public forum. It has been agreed that 40 minutes will be allowed for this item, which is to be split for this meeting into 20 minutes for the petitions and statements and 20 minutes for the questions. Details of the petitions, statements and questions received have been published on our website. Members of the public who have registered to speak have been invited to watch on YouTube and enter the waiting room for the meeting. I will outline the following for them. You will be permitted to enter the meeting from the waiting room and you will be put on mute initially. You may be in the waiting room a little time before your turn, so please be patient. I will call your name, at which point you can unmute yourself. If the person has not joined the meeting or there are technical issues admitting people to the meeting, we will move on to the next person and seek to return to them afterwards if the person becomes available. When the exchange is finished, you will leave the meeting and the next person will be called. In the event of any disruption, I will give you 2 warnings before that person is removed from the meeting so that the meeting is able to continue. Firstly, I would like to move to public petitions. 2 public petitions have been received for this meeting and both wish to speak to their petitions. This is shown on the screen now. You have 1 minute to present your petition, which will be referred to the Mayor for consideration and reply. So I'd first like to move to Emma Edwards, PQ01. You have 1 minute to speak to your petition. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So this petition was regarding, or is regarding, the holm oak tree on Ashley Down Road in response to a notice saying it was going to be felled. This took up a lot of public interest and I gathered 1,871 signatures. Although it was suggested that this might not be possible to save the tree, consulting with the Bristol Tree Forum, what was suggested was that all avenues were explored before the tree was felled. Such a large tree.
You have 20 seconds left. Thank you.
The tree is home to birds and wildlife, and its role in cutting carbon in the area cannot be underestimated. And we ask that council look at this petition before any decision is made. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to move to PP02, Simon Stafford Townsend. You have 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, Mr Mayor, councillors, on behalf of residents and traders on and around Colston Street, I present this petition. It carries a simple ask, that council commits to changing the names of Colston Street and Colston Avenue, and for new names to be decided in consultation with local residents, traders and visitors. The local preference is for the historical name of Steep Street and Froome Avenue respectively. I'd like to emphasise that this is very much a locally grown petition. There is a supporting statement from a Colston Street resident of some 10 years standing and many comments from locals. The University of Bristol has also given its official support. In a fitting irony of the pandemic, I'm even presenting this petition to you from my therapy room on Colston Street, or as I like to call it—
You have 20 seconds left. Thank you.
Thank you. The street formerly known as Steep Street. I'd also like to thank the administration for its receptiveness to date. I may be agreeing, but this is not a party political petition, and it would be remiss of me not to represent residents and traders' thanks for referring this matter to the Bristol History Commission. Perhaps, Mr Mayor, you could update us on what that—
Thank you very much. If you'd like to draw to a close now, thank you.
Yep. Means in terms of what will happen about this next and when. I believe petitioners would appreciate the update. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to move to public statements that have been received. There were a total of 66 public statements received, a list of which will be displayed on the screen. 11 members of the public have indicated that they wish to speak to their statements. These are indicated on the list on the screen and will be run through in order. I will invite each person to speak to their statement for 1 minute. Please do summarise, and please bear in mind that all statements were published for councillors, the Mayor and the public to view in advance of this meeting. So if we can move down to PS 43, Andrew Lynch, you have 1 minute. Andrew, thank you. Andrew, are you able to, I know you've got problems with your audio, are you able to connect? With your forgiveness, I will move on, and then if we can get your audio sorted out, we can come back to you in a bit. Can you just give it a go now? See if we can hear you. No, I'm afraid.
Hold on. Sorry. Here you are.
Okay.
I'm here now.
Thank you. You have 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Bristol City Council is a shareholder in First Corporate Shipping, also known as the Bristol Port Company. Over the past 8 or 9 years, the port has made political donations of about £174,000, including large sums to the current Prime Minister and the Vote Leave campaign, as well as smaller sums to local Conservative associations. One might deduce from this that the council has thus contributed about £30,000 to these causes. As a shareholder, the council has to watch while the port hands out money to causes which, I would suggest, are against the interests of many of its stakeholders. That is not good governance.
You have 20 seconds left. Thank you.
I ask that the mayor or his successor, should there be one, commit to ending this anomaly. It is a small amount of money, but a very big principle. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to move to PS 45, Jonty Hance. Jonty, you have 1 minute. Thank you.
Apologies, can people hear me? I know there are issues with my webcam, but...
Yeah, we can.
Okay. I'm a PhD student at the university. I own 1, soon to be 2, of the flats in 3 Kings Court, the Foster's Arms Houses buildings, and I'm a director of the company that owns and manages that same building. I'm keen on local history and have spent many hours down at the archives researching the building and area, and I wholeheartedly believe the name of Colston Street, the street on which I live and own property, should be changed. Street names tell stories, and the story that Bristol City Corporation wanted to tell in the 1860s when they renamed a street from something it had been since time immemorial was that Edward Colston was a man worth celebrating, revering even. This is not the case. If you read my statement, I go into more detail. It is obvious, as it has been obvious for a long time, that the city's hero worship has come to an end. We must educate ourselves about him. The best place to do this is in museums and history books, not through glorifying statues and street names. Colston Street must be renamed. I only hope the council has the strength and will to do this. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I would now like to move to PS 47, Rob Dixon. You have 1 minute. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Okay. I just you'll see my statement, but while Bristol's tree replacement and planting policies are rightly held up as good practice, unfortunately, schemes such as Bonington Walk Open Space, Ashley Hill Maples, Hengrove Park, and even Ashley Down Station have one thing in common: unnecessary loss of trees. Trees on development sites are seen as inconvenient, expendable, and easily replaced. At Bonington Walk, only a handful of the many trees on the actual development area have been retained. The council have consistently failed to acknowledge that the majority of retained trees are actually on private land and can't be
You have
saved.
20 seconds left. Thank you.
I've asked whether planning's priorities have been changed in respect of the council's declaration of a climate emergency. If not, it's clear they should be, because they are focused on maximising development rather than looking at the overall picture.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to move to PS 49, Alex Hartley. You have 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to speak in support of the motion on a referendum.
Can I ask that you turn the volume up, please, because we can barely hear you. Thank you.
In 2012, the role of a directly elected mayor was pitched as a way to increase democracy in Bristol, supposedly giving citizens a more accountable and open figurehead for the council. I'd suggest that the opposite has been the outcome. The mayor has overridden the majority will of elected councillors, accountability has diminished, and a lack of openness and scrutiny has resulted in a series of costly failures, such as the Bristol Energy fiasco. Rather than becoming more engaged with the views of local residents, the Mayor has chosen to only listen to city partners and executives, with residents being shut out. The Mayor has suggested in the last few weeks that the city will outgrow the council. I would suggest the only thing that has outgrown this council is the Mayor's ego.
You have 20 seconds left.
As of the most recent quality of life survey, only 25% of people in Hotwells and Harbourside being an elected mayor is improving the leadership of the city. The people of Bristol deserve a chance to make their own mind up on the role. The people of Hotwells and Harbourside want a referendum. The people of Bristol want a referendum. And I hope that the council votes to give them one today. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to move to PS50, Merch Clark. You have 1 minute. Thank you.
In my statement, also on this, the referendum issue, I've pointed out areas of concern about the mayoral model and the negative impact it's had on decision making in Bristol. We have had 2 mayors, one independent and one with strong political party support. Neither have achieved the aims that many hoped having a directly elected mayor would bring. Luckily, the people of Bristol have the right to review this decision by choosing to hold a referendum, and it's important to start that process as soon as possible. The motion proposes the leader cabinet model to substitute the directly elected mayor. It could have been a committee model. However, it was necessary
You have 20 seconds left. Thank you.
Select one path to set the wheels in motion. Both systems ensure the scrutiny and transparency are held as core values. I would urge councillors from across the chamber to support the motion and, as another statement mentions, not let perfection be the enemy of the good. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to move to PS51. Christina Biggs, you have 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I'd like to address the points made by Jackie Hawkins and the Conservative Party motion about the inclusion of the Portway in the Cumberland Basin in the clean air zone. We at the Bristol Clean Air Alliance, we understand that the purpose of this is not so much to raise income, but to cause fleet change. It's extremely important that the Portway and Cumberland Basin are included in the clean air zone because it will force people to change to less polluting diesel. I also want to make the point that we're not talking about all cars, we're only talking about polluting cars, which really should not be on the road and certainly not near the centre of Bristol. In our statement, thank you. We present lots of reasons why we've really got to shift away from diesel. And my question later, I hope, will show that there is a measurable way to make sure that there isn't driving round. And I'm hoping that the answer to my question will be the one I'm hoping for.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to move to PS55. David Redgewell, you have 1 minute, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My statement's really to say that it's very, very important with mass transit. It's a very important project for Bristol and the West Midlands Combined Authority, that we simply don't go down the line again of buying more and more fleets of bendy buses. We've seen bendy buses scrapped as a concept both in Swansea, we've seen them scrapped in Leeds and Bradford, and it's not really a way to go forward. I know in the government's bus strategy yesterday, it talked about Metro bus, it highlighted Bristol. You don't have enough bus lanes for those buses, but high quality double deckers with bus interchanges and bus quality corridors is the way forward. But I don't want to lose the concept this time by
you have 20 seconds, thank you.
By busy adding more bendy buses, when what we should be looking at is a proper light rail transit system for the greater Bristol area, and we should be investing in light rail and overground, underground network as the way forward, like Newcastle, Manchester and Nottingham. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to move to PS56. Jackie Hawken, you have 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I know I speak for many thousands of Bristolians alarmed at the inclusion of the end of the Portway and Cumberland Basin in the CAZ. According to the Mayor, this area has been included to capture more vehicles, thus grabbing more money, not a morally responsible or acceptable reason to ruin people's lives. The ill-conceived plan states that HGVs and diesel vehicles can avoid the area by leaving the Portway at Sea Mills or Clifton, causing pollution, congestion and rat runs in a wide area of North Bristol, affecting many children. The MP for Bristol North West was apparently told by officers that modelling carried out showed no detrimental effect to North Bristol.
You have
This
20
cannot
seconds
be
left.
true.
Thank you.
If the scheme goes ahead with this inclusion, an important ring road will become a barrier between north and south, affecting thousands of people and businesses. The ensuing destruction, chaos, congestion and pollution will be catastrophic for my city. This is a plea for fairness and common sense, and I respectfully request that you support the motion today, putting the citizens of Bristol above party loyalty. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd now like to move to PS 59, Nick Lynn. You have 1 minute. Thank you.
I'm a resident of the Three Kings Court on Colston Street. I don't think we should be honouring the slave trader Edward Colston with the continued use of his name. The wealth he amassed was only due to the exploitation of the Africans his company enslaved. The name should be changed back to its historic name, Steep Street.
Thank you very much. We will now move to public questions received. Please note that the questions have been published on the website and are shared on the screen now. We have received 53 questions were received and 44 members of the public, from 44 members of the public, sorry. 10 of those have indicated that they wish to attend the meeting. These are indicated on the list and we will run through them in order. Each participant is asked to read their question out and the Mayor will reply verbally. Following the Mayor's response, the participant can then ask a supplementary question. We will try to get through as many of those who've requested to speak as possible, and we have 20 minutes available. It may not be possible to speak to all of the registered people to speak, so we'll just ask if you can bear with us. David Redgewell, if you'd like to ask your question of the Mayor, please. Thank you.
Yeah, my first question is about Bristol Waste Company, and really I want to know how much activity has been taken by Bristol Waste Company in a drawdown contract with the City Council to remove graffiti from around the city and its parks, gardens and buildings.
Thanks, Dave. So the contract with Bristol Waste does include graffiti removal, and since April 2020, around about 1,500 graffiti tags have been removed. You'd have seen the Big Tidy team out as well, just doing a blitz of specific hotspots within the city. As part of the service, they'll remove graffiti from historic buildings and monuments. And for private properties, the council requires an indemnity form to be completed and returned before the graffiti can be removed, just for our own safety. So we are trialling removing the requirement for a completed indemnity form to see if this increases the amount of graffiti removed. But obviously we need to wait for the findings of that exploration.
Do you have a supplementary for the Mayor, David?
I suppose my concern is Bristol's a beautiful historic city, and I see graffiti on buildings of great heritage importance. And I just wonder what progress is being made with those owners to see if we can get that removed.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree. I mean, I walk around. One of the points I've made is that particularly when stuff isn't very good, if you're going to practice at home, don't practice in public. Yeah, so at least we get some decent quality street art. And I've actually caught a couple of people in the process of graffitiing myself, and ended up in situations where I advised them it wasn't a good thing to be doing for the city. The neighbourhood enforcement team has dealt with 72 graffiti cases, which have resulted in issuing 16 community protection warnings, 3 community protection notices and 1 fixed penalty notices. So there, in terms of your question, there aren't any formal agreements in place with the bodies referred to in the question, but we will continue to try and work with our city partners on that, on that public realm. What we have got through the city office in particular, we've got many of our major city partners, from enforcement to business voluntary community sector, looking at quality of life and also the attractiveness of Bristol as a destination city, we are really focused on the quality of our public space. So there are minds focused on this, but it is a challenge.
Can I ask you to ask your question for PQ04, David? Thank you.
Yes, my second question is about Network Rail, which of course is the government agency, and the clean-up campaign by the Secretary of State branch chaps. And I really wonder what progress has been made with Network Rail, the British Transport Police and First Group as Great Western Railways to see if we can clean up the rail corridors from Bristol.
Ask you to ask your question for PQ.
I think that was just a delay in the line, Echo. So yeah, again, with Network Rail, who obviously are landowners, structure owners, this is a conversation we're having them as well, and ourselves. We've really asked them to step up the quality of their intervention and their land management, and there has been a positive response from them. But let me go back with Councillor Pearce, who's got the cabinet brief for this, and I'm sure we'll be able to give more detail on those discussions as they've happened.
David, do you have a supplementary question?
I suppose my only supplementary is to ask the Mayor to ask the British Transport Police on what progress they're making on prosecutions on the rail network in the Greater Bristol area on graffiti removal.
We can do that, Dave. That's not a problem. I'm just always conscious. It's something I ask of our city partners. I say to them, you can turn up with 1,000 asks, and we're stretched for resource. One of the things we are aware of is that cleaning up our public realm is just one of the challenges we're taking on, and it's one of the challenges they are taking on as well in terms of the police. So while we would clearly go to Network Rail and the police and ask them to be really on top of this, I just want to do it respectfully, recognising that they've got 1,001 things they're trying to get done as well. But we are making it clear that this is a real city priority for us to make sure that our city is clean and tidy. We said that at the beginning, we put significant resource into it, and with the cooperation and partnership with our city, we can continue to make a good progress. But it's a challenge and there's a long way to go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to move to PQ05, Christy Braham. Would you like to ask your question of the Mayor? Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, Mayor and Councillors. So my name is Christy Braham and I am a member of ACORN, the Community Union, and I'd like to address you today regarding our campaign. So I came to Bristol as part of my PhD research into access to healthcare for refugee women. And in the process, I was racially profiled and unlawfully evicted from my home in Euston by police officers from Avon and Somerset Constabulary. Now, the police subsequently admitted wrongdoing and a lack of knowledge of housing law. And last year, they assured us that they would receive additional training from the tenancy relations team at the council to prevent this from happening to others. Yet, since then, there have been a string of similar cases of unlawful evictions at the hands of police officers across Bristol, particularly during the pandemic. So my question is, why are police officers from Avon and Somerset Constabulary aiding in unlawful evictions in Bristol? And what tangible actions will Bristol City Council take to ensure that unlawful evictions like my own do not occur within their local authority?
Well, in terms of the actions of Avon and Somerset Police, if we see the list of what's gone on, and participation in unlawful evictions, that's clearly something we'd want to raise with the leadership, both from myself across a number of organisations. I won't embarrass them, but certainly with myself and Asher, we've been meeting with the leaders of the police for some time on everything from street conflict to knife crime to inequalities and stop and search, and actually have built a very effective working relationship with the police about dealing with overt and covert racism within the structures and system. I think we've had really good buy-in, so there's a wider context to this. But in terms of their participation in evictions, that's a question we'll have to ask. I'd have to see the numbers on that. In terms of our powers as an authority, there's a broader question about how illegal evictions are stopped in the first instance, so that landlords know their position. So the legal background is that the City Council has the powers under the Protection from Eviction Act of 1977 to investigate and take enforcement action for illegal eviction and harassment cases. The final decision to take forward an enforcement case is made by legal services. The case in this question was closed following legal advice, and the team explained that in detail in writing. Although these powers are not a statutory duty upon local authorities, we have prioritised such cases to take to investigation and take enforcement action where there is sufficient evidence to do so. And then we are beholden to the ins and outs of the criminal justice system. So the cases must meet the public interest test as set out in the Code of Crown Prosecutions. But this council is one of few local authorities that is proactively prioritising such cases. But as is clearly the case, we will continue to prioritise in line with our prioritisation of housing and communities in general to make sure that we have good quality lets and protections for tenants wherever we can enforce them.
Christy, do you have a supplementary question for the Mayor?
Yes, please. So thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate what you've just said there regarding sort of the legal, I suppose, legal limits of this. But there are other ways of actually addressing this issue. So, for example, what levels of support can the council actually give to people who experience evictions, particularly illegal evictions, especially given the context that we're all living in now with the pandemic? And, you know, will the council and the Mayor, by extension, actually be willing to make a public statement that makes it clear that such evictions should not be tolerated, especially at the hands of the police?
I think we've been quite clear on the position we've taken on evictions. And actually, I say since coming in, we set out, when I used to share an office next door to Acorn, we set out to raise the profile of Acorn and its presence within the city as well. And in fact, gave Acorn a position on the housing board, in the homes board in the city, which they still have, to get upstream in housing policy and help us solve problems before they arise rather than come in just after they arise. So actually, the intelligence of how we manage our system, and particularly around illegal evictions, you know, I would have, to be honest, it should have been brought up on the homes board with Acorn in 2016, since it was since we set that board up. So we're really keen in terms of the support. Let's take, I mean, you can raise them here, of course, but it would also be good to raise this offline, because support is a very broad term. If we can focus in on the 3 to 5, and I like my listing 3s and 5s unnecessary, but if we can focus in on the 3 to 5 interventions that you think would be the most incisive interventions and impactful interventions, then we can do that. And I can see Helen Godwin, who's the chair of the Homes Board, and obviously you've got someone continuing on the Homes Board. Why don't we work together with your representative on Bristol's Homes Board to work out what those interventions are and build them into not just you know, our approach, but build them into the One City plan. I would suggest that we could actually make a case for having a clear city target of reducing the number of illegal evictions in the One City plan by X percentage by X year, so that we have a standard that not just the city council, but our whole range of city partners are pointing at. That would include the police, the universities, the unions, the voluntary community sector, and all the organisations that helps out Bristol. So we can really lock this into the city's aspirations. More than happy to do that.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to move to PQ09. Clive Stevens, if you'd like to ask your question, please. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, Marvin. I hope you and your family are well. Okay, I'll carry on. That wasn't my first question. I'm going to talk about policy development scrutiny. That's the type of scrutiny that is early on. It's using councillors in a collaborative, creative manner, inquiries, task and finish, that type of thing. And so my question is, if you're elected as mayor again, will you assist overview and scrutiny to make policy development scrutiny more effective?
So Clive, look, when people get elected, they get elected because they say they're people of agency who can make things happen and do things. And I constantly get this kind of, Marvin, can you help us do scrutiny? Can you help us do our, be perfectly frank, do our job? The agenda for scrutiny is set by Scrutiny. And in terms of getting upstream in policy making, I will share that when I was director of the local strategic partnership, it was a challenge I brought to Steve Comer as a council officer and the political leadership, actually, that rather than, and look, this is pre-mayoral model, right? This is the truth of it. The council officers looked at the councillors as a bit of a basket case, and I'm sorry to break it, right? And it was all about council officers would be hauled before councillors and then cross-examined on papers they developed. That's what it was, and it was a game. How can, you know, and councillors were trying to get officers, officers were trying to get councillors. There was no healthy relationship. And what I did as the director of the LSP was to say to Steve Comer, who was head of Scrutiny at the time, listen, why don't we develop a bit of a more collaborative relationship here? So this kind of any tension, the mistrust is something that has been in the City Council for a long time. Let's develop a collaborative relationship and let's get Scrutiny working on policy development. There are a number of critical issues we could look at: housing, child poverty, hunger. Any Scrutiny at any time could pick any of those issues and begin to develop policy. You could have looked at the nighttime economy. You could have Scrutiny could have lined itself up to the themes in the One City plan and begin to say, what do we want to see in the timeline for children, housing, transport, decarbonisation, biodiversity, economic recovery, inclusive economy, gentrification. Scrutiny could have put any of those topics on the table, and no one is stopping Scrutiny from doing that. So there's a big, wide policy world out there, you know. And look, if I can use a rugby image here, you know, when I used to play, you get players who complain about not being passed the ball, and what the captain will say is, "Mate, you've got to play yourself into the game. You know, you've got to show that you're going to help us score a try. You know, we're not going to pass the ball to you just to have a look at it. You know, and it's not just a participation sport, it's a team sport in which we have an objective. What we're trying to do in the city is get things done." So I would say, you know, look at the broad Scrutiny could look at the broad sweep of issues and challenges facing city. It is huge now with the COVID recession coming upon us. It is huge with the mental health crisis coming upon us. You know, it's huge with the need to counter the inequalities that have been unleashed in our economy and exposed, and just begin to generate policy. There's an open door to my office. There's an open door to any of the city gatherings. There's a second point I would just say that is not been raised. And it is this, that it comes into Scrutiny making decisions. Now, one of the founding principles, I think, of democracy is transparency, right? Now, whatever you say, what we had in the past in the council is invisible decision-making. So let's take the arena, for example, right? If I had gone ahead with the Scrutiny's wishes and built an arena, borrowed 160 to 200 million pounds to build an arena, and we built it, and we were paying 5 million pound plus a year in interest in repayments now, and that arena was built and empty because it wouldn't have opened in the middle of a pandemic and a financial disaster, who would have been held accountable for that decision? Well, it wouldn't have been the invisibility of Scrutiny. It would have been me. So actually, at the same time as having a conversation about building Scrutiny and decision-making, you have to also have the conversation about how you're going to make Scrutiny, individual members, and as a body much more visible and accessible to the public to be held accountable for any decisions it wishes to make. Making decisions from positions of invisibility is not supporting of democracy. And as I would actually suggest that the visibility of the mayoral model is about transparency of democracy, as in Croydon at the moment, where they made a financial mess of themselves. Government are saying we want you to have a mayor because it builds in accountability and visibility.
Okay, thank you. I have a supplementary. I'll be quick. So nobody is saying, I hope, that Scrutiny takes decisions, but Scrutiny is an influencer. Your experiences back in 2012 seem to dismiss councillor input into early stage scrutiny, which is a real shame. But certainly when Scrutiny was reassessing its role in 2017, that was in the background of cuts to funding of Scrutiny. So Marvin, if Osm Overview Scrutiny does, this is my supplementary, does decide it wants to take on some issues, say housing or adult social care, it will need more resources, it will need officer resources, and it will need cabinet members to release that and release information. Will you support that process?
I think, dare I just say, you're kind of misrepresenting what I said. I said in 2010, I actually initiated a whole series of work to get Scrutiny involved in pre-policy making. one of the things we talked about there was just setting up inquiry days. So, to be honest, this is a council that's generating work for itself in many ways. Resource isn't the issue. We have phenomenal expertise that is at hand within the city. We've done this with the city office. We've got a policy school at Bristol University that could come down. We've got policy at the University of West of England. We've got business expertise. We can zoom in national experts as well, people who will participate in discussions. Look at what's just happened with the Citizens Assembly. 55 expert contributions to support citizens in coming up with recommendations for what the city does. And in getting elected, people are saying, listen, I'm bringing some expertise, I'm bringing some ability to make things happen. So I think it's a little bit of a false hurdle. When I was working in NHS, we generated loads of interventions and events to tackle mental health inequalities. And many of those things were just mobilizing existing resources that were in the city, community power, community engagement. So I'd suggest that actually the field of play in terms of issues and in terms of expertise within the city to draw on is there. It does not need to all go through council officers. I think sometimes we got to make stuff happen ourselves, play ourselves into the game.
Okay, thank you. My second question, Lord Mayor, and that was, so that is about whether you feel that a task and finish or policy development should be applied to the mayoral model and the constitution itself. What's your view on that, please, Marvin?
Again, I think you can decide, well, you're no longer there, but Scrutiny can decide to spend its time on whatever it wants to spend its time on. That is up to Scrutiny. I suggest that at the moment we have a number of crises that would really benefit from having a number of councillors committing to working out what the answers are. Right? We got a financial cliff edge in terms of people with no recourse to public funds. Helen's been working on that again with our city partners. We've got the underlying drivers of inequality being unleashed in the city. Those most marginal to the economy hit first by the consequences of COVID, and then least well placed to benefit from the recovery. So compounding inequalities is going to be a big challenge. How do we tackle extremism that could accompany the exclusion? There's been some motions, there's been some statements today on renaming city roads. So how do we do that in a way that takes the whole city with us? Not just those people who are kind of politically tuned in on that wavelength, but people actually think that Colston is a part of their identity and their heritage. I have family members who feel that they've lost a part of themselves with the loss of the Colston statue. That is not direct policy, but it's how we create the right culture. We could talk about race inequality in health, destigmatizing or allaying fears of vaccines. There are so many crises that Scrutiny could get involved in that I would welcome. If you want to spend your time debating the political structure in the city, then obviously that's the decision you make about your use of the time. I suggest there are some policy priorities that would actually be a better use of time.
Okay, thank you for that. And I don't have to be fair on others, I don't have another supplementary. Good luck everyone with your election campaigns.
Thank you very much, Clive. I think we've seen more of you since you've left the council than we did before speaking. So thank you very much indeed. That concludes the questions received from members of the public. I would now like to move to agenda item 7, petitions notified by councillors. There have been 4 councillors' petitions received for this meeting. Each councillor will be invited to speak for 1 minute to their petition. Councillor O'Rourke, would you like to present your petition? Thank you.
Thank you. The Highways Act places a duty on the council to keep ways open and only close them for a reasonable cause. The reason that the Mardyke Steps has been closed for over a year is because officers were trying to ascertain who was the owner of it. I wasn't able to find out from the officers, but the land registry very quickly told me who the owner was, and I was able to phone that person and get he took responsibility for the wall straight away. So what we're asking for here is that now that the the owner is known, that it's not reasonable.
20 seconds, thank you.
Continue, and we're asking that the council goes ahead, does the work, and then can put a charge on the owner to reclaim the money afterwards, and that is reasonable. So please, can we have the work progress and then afterwards claim back the money because we're secure in knowing who the owner is? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I would now like to move to CP02. Councillor Weston, you have 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. The petition relates to bins at Blaze. Essentially, there was a proposal to remove 3 bins on the Blaze estate. The petition's been signed by 280 signatories. Since we've gathered signatures, there seems to have been some progress on this, that the bins won't be removed, because essentially, you know, we all know in lockdown, people are going to local parks. The parks and estates are getting overwhelmed. And our concern was, if you remove the bins, the litter's not going to go home, sadly, with the people. It's going to go in the bushes. And some of us that do litter picks are quite concerned about having to then go back out and start to pick it all up again. So I present the petition. Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed. I now like to move to CP03. Councillor Morris, you have 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The petition reads, we, the undersigned, call upon Bristol City Council to support residents in making this part of Sturminster Road wider. Currently, the road is very narrow for the volume of traffic using it, and local people are fed up with having their cars either damaged or written off. Furthermore, this has created a clear safety hazard, and there is not a suitable crossing point for pedestrians to use safely. Residents have contacted me telling me that they've been hit by passing cars and buses, and it's causing them a lot of problems. I will leave it there. We've had 25 signatories. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to move to CP05. Councillor Hopkins, you have 1 minute. Thank you. Councillor Hopkins, you're on.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Firstly, the number of signatures on this petition indicates, for what should be quite a small matter, the strength of local feeling. We have the community garden, who actually operate 3 yards from the pavilion. They've done a wonderful job over the years on horticultural and environmental matters. The football club are from just up the road and need to expand. We have had the showers not working here for ages. The asset transfer is being delayed and delayed and delayed. In the meantime, can we get a sensible license for this new joint organisation to take on, renovate and use properly this facility? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the petitions presented by members of council. A written reply will be provided. I'd now like to move to agenda item 8, the Mayoral Commission update. Youth mayors, youth councillors, end of year progress report. I am delighted to welcome the city's youth mayors, Alice Trowell and John Wayman, to the meeting. Alice and John, please present your reports. Thank you.
Hi, I'm John, and I'm one of Bristol's 2 youth mayors and also a member of Bristol City Youth Council.
Hi, I'm Alice. I'm one of the youth mayors and a member of Youth Council for East Central.
So, unfortunately, with COVID still being a bit of a problem, the Youth Council has had to continue working online instead of moving back to in-person meetings. Although this means our progress on some issues has stalled a little, especially with many of our members having to deal with the pressures of online learning prior to schools going back, we've still been busy and we've got lots to tell you about.
One of the most important things to let everyone know is that due to COVID-19, we have had to cancel the Bristol Big Vote, and a number of our youth councillors will be staying on until February 2022, including myself. I'll be staying as youth mayor, and John will be staying as youth mayor until he goes off to uni in October. However, that doesn't mean we're not recruiting, and we're actively recruiting for a number of positions through application forms.
So now we'd like to tell you a bit about what our different campaign groups on the Youth Council have been working on. So in the Environment and Transport Group, in light of the recent focus on walking and cycling by the government, the Environment and Transport Group have shifted their emphasis towards a project concerning young people's journeys to and from school. Currently, a survey is going around trying to gather young people's views on what they see as the largest barriers preventing them from walking or cycling to school. The survey closes at the end of March, but so far we've had a lot of success with over 800 responses. After that, the aim is to take the most prevalent barriers identified by that survey and form a focus group to brainstorm ways to tackle those problems. And that's to make sure we're gathering young people's voices on solutions, not just problems.
So in Equal Bristol, over the past 2 years, Equal Bristol has been steadily working towards one goal, a more accessible and equitable Bristol for young people to take part in. We have worked with Period Friendly Bristol to help tackle stigma around periods. We've helped make period products more accessible in primary schools and created conversations around the topic. Within the BCYC, we have created a gender neutral position for Youth Mayor, in order to make the role more accessible for non-binary people. Moreover, we have started research into how the SEND budget affects students, as well as creating a transition pack that aims to aid the move from primary to secondary school, especially for SEND young people. Over the upcoming year, we hope to hold a careers fair for BAME young people to help highlight more positive and meaningful representation. This is going to be taking place in October.
So from the supported mental well-being and youth voice campaign, due to COVID, many of the plans they have had to be put on hold. However, they're coming with a new plan that will help councillors connect with young people. They're developing a set of resources to help young people better express their views and opinions to councillors so you can help represent their views and opinions. They're also helping to plan an online youth voice conference to make sure they're continuing jobs as representatives of young people. And this will be run entirely on Zoom to make sure that they're keeping things safe whilst also fulfilling their role as youth representatives. And now we're going to update you on a few of our personal campaigns as youth mayors.
So one of the biggest campaigns myself and John have been leading on is the International Youth Mayors Association, which has been running since August 2020. We now have membership across 6 countries and are currently expanding into America and Canada, which is going to make our time zones a little bit hard, and I know our youth workers not particularly looking forward to. We run a monthly session where we meet to discuss best practice and issues that are affecting young people across the entire world. And we're currently hoping to run a worldwide youth politics conference. The My Body Means campaign, which was my personal campaign, ran for a week in December over Instagram and Twitter and has led to many inspirational stories being shared from a number of people. It had news coverage and a variety of young people sharing their stories about body image. We've also written a report on the impact of lockdown on young people, which has been submitted as a paper for you all as councillors to read. I think it's definitely worth a read as it gives a real insight into how COVID has impacted on young people's education, mental health and social lives. We're currently representing young people's voices on a lot of boards, including the Western Harbour and newly created One City Children Young People's Board. This was our priority we chose at the city gathering last week. Another thing we've been working on is having a voice in consultations. Hopefully from now on, before consultations are put out, if they affect young people, they're going to be looked over by one of us or a member of the Youth Council. We hope that by being able to give our feedback before they go out, we'll increase the turnout of young people that reply to these surveys for you. Now we're going to update you on what our members of UK Youth Parliament have been doing.
So Molly and Leah are our members of UK Youth Parliament, and firstly, one of the campaigns they've been working on concerns the environment. And this year, the Southwest Youth Parliament campaign created an online campaign during their regional meetings. The aim of the work was to ensure councils in the Southwest have clear environmental plans accessible to all young people. They felt that Bristol's environmental plans and their accessibility was exemplary in comparison with the rest of the region. So they spent their time aiding the youth MYPs from Plymouth and Dorset. In terms of the campaign on knife crime, they also started a regional campaign centered around protecting young people from knife crime. They wanted to promote education around knife crime within schools in the Southwest, and to better inform their campaign for support, they created a survey to collate the opinions of young people in various local areas. The survey focused on personal experience, prevention, media portrayal, and the impact of COVID-19 on knife crime. Interestingly, 50% of people had considered carrying a knife, and 66% had witnessed an incident involving knives. They hope that the information provided to them in the survey will allow them to tailor their education to best fit the needs of young people, as well as provide them with suggestions for improvements to bring key decision makers. And looking forward to 2021, the UK Youth Parliament campaigns for 2021 are free university, supporting mental health, and taking action on the climate emergency, with a particular focus on stopping plastic pollution. And then going forward, they will work regionally and locally on these campaigns, as well as continuing to finish off the work of the previous year's campaigns. So now we're going to give you an update on the work that senior practitioners in the council have been doing.
Overall, youth work has continued in Bristol, with some in-person work continuing in small COVID-secure groups. In areas that have limited youth services, workers have been giving out wellbeing packs to young people. Creative Youth Network have continued work on one-to-one sessions and targeted youth work. A mapping document has been developed which maps all of the youth provision in Bristol, which will become a really useful tool for youth workers and young people alike. This document has been attached in your papers and I think was emailed out by Martin. We would now like to share with you a couple of positive examples of youth work that have been happening in North, South and East Central. In North, a notable project ongoing in North Bristol is fundraising for what is currently called Project 50. The aim is to take 50 young people from the northwest of the city out of the city and into the countryside in the summer to help with mental health issues. The number of participants could increase to 100 or 150 depending on the success of funding.
And in East Central, youth and player organisations are continuing to manage and run services in COVID-safe environments for the most vulnerable young people. Notable example has been Barton Hill. A piece of work has been picked up by a partnership of agencies working with young people involved in antisocial behaviour around the area. Partnership detached team has worked with young people to do issue-based work with this group from last November in a session set up in the Crypt Youth Space. This has clearly been a bit of a success, as the young people invited along to those sessions from this group has asked for sessions to continue, and the various youth organisations have gotten together to plan further sessions. And this is just one of many very collaborative pieces of work happening within East Central.
In South, young people and workers are currently attending policeman's meetings every month. One of the things that one of the senior workers identified was that they've been really skimming over the experience of young people and how young people that own need. So they now run a South Young People's Man's meeting where they're able to discuss a package of support around a young person, which is then able to help feed into the South Pressures meeting. This approach allows them to focus more on contextual safeguarding. Southwide Youth Partnership put in a £60,000 bid to tackle antisocial behaviour, which has been granted. This multi-agency way of working is going to give them greater flexibility to tackle antisocial behaviour and allows for collective responsibility. We're now going to talk a bit more about the organisation that has allowed this funding to happen, the Youth Sector Support Fund.
So we have 5 members of the Youth Council sitting on the Youth Sector Support Fund. They've had 6 meetings since the start of September, and they've granted over £500,000 to youth projects in the city. East Central has received £190,000 split over 21 projects, North £171,000 over 14 projects, and South £167,000 over 11 projects. An example of the positive nature of this group is that one of the members has said it's allowed them to really have a voice in determining which organisations young people in Bristol have an absolute need for.
Another project the Youth Council have been involved in is the Belonging Strategy Consultation Group. From initial meetings with Jackie Jensen to becoming part of the Youth Consultation Group, we have shaped much of the work being done on the Belonging Strategy. What this piece of work really highlighted is the fact that it's incredibly easy and worthwhile to co-produce work with young people, especially when it's about them. Now we're going to speak about some of the Youth Council's major overarching projects quickly.
So firstly, we're working on planning an online Bristol Youth Voice consultation event to make sure the diverse voices from around the city are still being heard, even in a pandemic. And secondly, we're going to be working with Festival Ideas to host a Q&A with youth councillors to make sure Bristol's young people see us as a group that they can turn to if they want to raise issues that are important to them.
So thank you so much for listening to us. I'll let John say thank you in a minute, but we wanted to jump in and say a huge thank you to someone that had a little shout out in the speech to Jackie Jensen for the work she's done with young people over the past however long, and the way she's really worked with the Youth Council, especially in the last few months on the Belonging Strategy. She's definitely going to be missed by us all. So thank you for listening to us. We've had to rattle through, but if anyone would like a copy of this or has any questions, they can contact the Youth Participation Team email. I'll just hand back over to John.
Yep. Thank you for continuing to listening to us, and thank you for continuing to support all the work we're doing.
Thank you very much. I think you've got a round of applause there. Well done. I'd now like to move to the debate. I'd like first of all to call upon Councillor Godwin to speak on behalf of the Labour group. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's always one of my favourite meetings, this one, where we get to hear from our youth mayors and youth council to hear what they've been up to. And I think the way that Alice and John have taken on these roles during this really difficult time, and you always deliver your updates and deliver your plans with such clarity and such ambition as well. It's always a really positive experience to hear from you both. So thank you very much for all that you are doing. I also think it's really important to thank you for your visibility during the last year. It's been really difficult for all of us to be as visible as we would like in the city in terms of being out in our wards and being able to do that face-to-face contact that we all really enjoy. And it's no different for you, but I think you've really sort of stayed visible and you've been really active and proactive in taking things on. And I think your generation, you know, we absolutely need to hear from you at the moment, because we haven't concentrated enough on the impact of the pandemic on young people, and especially young people who are coming towards the end of their formal education like yourselves. And we really absolutely need to keep hearing your voices on that. And the Youth Council and the Youth Mayors are a great conduit for us in Bristol to hear what the impact's been on Bristol kids. So thank you very much for that, and especially for the survey and the work that you've been doing around that. I'm really delighted that we've got the Children and Young People's Board now as one of the key thematic boards on the One City plan. And it was really important to me that we have young people's voices running through that. In an ideal world, we would have liked to have had from the outset a shadow board of young people that could mirror everything we're doing. It's not been possible this year because of resource. I hope we can get there in the future, but for now, having youth mayors as a co-chair alongside me is really important, and you know, I want you to feel empowered to use your voice at those meetings. And already
I'd like to ask you to draw to a close, please. Thank you.
Well, every year this happens. I think I'm like not taking any time, and I've gone on too long. Okay, so in that case, just a massive thank you, and just the stuff on the international work you're doing. I was on the call where that idea was planted, and to hear now that we have a real life international network is just absolutely phenomenal. So just a huge well done from me, and thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to call upon Councillor Morris to speak on behalf of the Conservative group. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Firstly, I would like to thank the Youth Council and the Youth Mayors for all of the hard work they have put into this report. In fact, I think we should be thanking all the children in the city for their understanding and patience, because they have been very badly impacted by the lockdowns. In particular, to those people on the Youth Council and the Youth Mayors, I'd like to thank them for raising their heads above the parapets and to serve their friends and their colleagues and their peers. You know, well done for giving it a go, and I hope that the sense of satisfaction of seeing what you have done over your tenure makes up for the hard work that you have clearly put into this role. Turning back to lockdown, I have seen with my own experience how difficult life has been for children, and by natural extension, their families, not just the nuclear family, but the extended families. You know, those with multiple children, those in houses which are too small for their needs, those without gardens and blocks of flats. This pandemic has brought to the surface a lot of issues which have not really been considered before. Now we have an opportunity to listen and to ensure that the voices of the young people are heard across this city. And that's why I welcome this report and this presentation, because we really do need to listen. And it's important that your voice is heard, particularly around, as you mentioned, you know, special educational needs. The transition from one school to another is so critical. I was having a conversation with a lady today who's struggling to get the right provision for her daughter. Finally, I'd just like to say about the interactive map, thought it was excellent. I couldn't have done it. Maybe it's because I'm old, I don't know. But a couple of comments. I couldn't see if there was a key there to help distinguish between the colours. Maybe put different symbols in so that people who maybe are colourblind, or, you know, it just helps to identify it more. As I made the map closer, I couldn't make the symbols bigger, and I struggled to keep hitting the button. And maybe one thing I thought may have been missing was some of the sports providers, because they're a great source of youth provision for so many people. But in summary, thank you very much. Excellent. And I look forward to receiving a copy of that report. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to call upon Councillor Lake to speak on behalf of the Green Group. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And thank you to our youth mayors, John and Alice. Great report and great response level to your travel survey. and I'd be interested to hear the outcomes on that, and all the other aspects you are working on despite COVID. Councillors in dialogue with and representing youth views sounds very, very positive. The paper on mental health and COVID is also very important and welcomed. 50% of young people considering carrying a knife is deeply worrying, and I'd like to see that report as well. Project 50 sounds very, very good. The ability, or for some the privilege, to get out of their environment and experience something else is crucial for broadening experiences and for the worldview, as well as mental health, and hopefully getting slightly cleaner air out in the countryside. I know we have a great number of young change makers, activists and politicians in our midst here in Bristol, doing great things, and who will go on to continue to do great things in our city and beyond. For example, one of the first youth mayors that we had back in 2013, Mayoral Royal, is now the Diversity, Inclusion, Cohesion and Equalities Officer at Avon Fire and Rescue Service, which for me as Chair of People and Culture, formerly the DICE Committee at Avon Fire Authority, is particularly pleasing. You will be aware that Bristol City Council has passed 2 historic motions during this 5-year term, as well as other notable work, of course. The 2 motions were the climate emergency motion in 2018 and the reparations motion just 2 weeks ago. The success of these declarations and motions of intention of action will depend on all of us, and much of the work will need to be continued by future generations because they are to be realised in the long term. I'm sickened to hear about the level of racist abuse experienced by our Mayor and Deputy Mayor following the reparations motion. And also there is some disappointment on some of the delays in action or conflicts of action regarding the climate emergency, particularly off the back of the huge youth strike for climate protests. You may be aware of the government legislation on the table right now that may limit the right to protest. So again, it's important that we get the youth voice. We have heard today about illegal evictions, allegedly supported by Avon and Somerset Police, which increases concerns. And also, we just missed out on a UBI, Universal Basic Income trial motion, which was listed in the papers. This is just a snapshot.
You have 20 seconds, thank you.
Happening. Some of us to you are old, others older still, having committed to Bristol City Council since 1966 even. But change and action is intergenerational and spirit is ageless. And we must continue to learn together, listen together and stay together and try to move forward together with young people.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Can you draw to a close? You're well over time. Thank you.
I wasn't well over time. I was a few seconds over time. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to call upon Councillor Wright to speak on behalf of the Liberal Democrat group. Thank you very much. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Alison John, I and the Lib Dem group would like to thank you for coming here tonight and for the work that you've done over the last year. I enjoyed looking at your maps that you sent around. As a Cartophile, I've always believed that you can never get enough maps. You've done really well to get through the issues you have during this last year of COVID. I was particularly pleased to hear about the work that you've done on tackling knife crime among the young. There are a few things more tragic than the needless loss of teenage lives. I also want to say that I really feel for people your age this last year who have had many of your plans for your teenage years trashed in a very cruel way. And these, of course, are years which you can't get back. Now, as we start to head back to normality, I hope that you'll all be able to make summer 2021 something very special because you really do deserve it. I'll close up now just by saying thanks for all the work you do and bringing a really valuable and different point of view to the council chamber. Lord Mayor, for you, this time last year, I declared my last ever councillor speech, which turned out, of course, to be sadly wrong. But this time I really do mean it. Thank you all and goodbye.
Thank you so much for that. Mayor Rees, would you like to respond? You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, and just thank you to our youth mayors. I think what we heard from them just now actually is an example to all of us. Some of the things we've been saying today. It was just an avalanche of delivery, just getting things done, stepping up, stepping into the policy area. identifying the boards, going along, participating, be it transport, environment, being involved in the instigation and the shaping of the children's board as well. We had a conversation early doors, and you know, we talked about how people who turn up with solutions become leaders, and you know, they have because they have turned up with solutions and ideas. They really are leaders, not just among young people, but among older people as well, setting the agenda. We can talk in many ways. Let's go through environment and transport group, Equality Bristol, the work on mental health, happened to sit the city priorities, environment board, knife crime, the children's board, as we've mentioned. But then let's look at digital exclusion as well. The fact that in the city gathering on Friday, even though they were back in school, they still produced a video and selected from amongst the priorities the top 3 for the city. We always give one over to the youth mayors and the city and the youth council and Babasa, and they come up with prioritising digital exclusion, totally in line with boards of the city leaders under the city office as well. But that is their priority. Absolutely fantastic, substantial policy. But also leaders on an international level as well. It was, as Helen pointed out, that early conversation when we talked about the potential of reaching out to mayors and young politicians in other parts of the world, across the UK, across Europe as well, about having young people's voice as we navigated Brexit, across the Commonwealth and reaching out to the Commonwealth Office when I was involved in the Commonwealth Office as well, and even to US mayors. Absolutely, and just stepping up, grabbing that opportunity, stepping up and beginning to make it happen. So my real hat's off to you. There is something for us to learn, that it is about grabbing every opportunity that comes and making stuff happen. And when you are that kind of person, people rally to you and people are rallying to you. So thanks for what you've done.
Thank you very much indeed. Council notes the report and thanks the youth mayors for all their work, and that is a sincere thanks. Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you again next year for a further update. I would now like to move to agenda item 9, Pay Policy Statement 2020 to 2021. Please may I ask Councillor Wellington, Chair of the HR Committee, to move the report. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yeah, so as you say, I'm the Chair of the HR Committee, so it is my responsibility to present this report to full Council, which is recommended to councillors following a debate at the HR Committee a few weeks ago. Under the Localism Act 2011, each local authority or public organisation is required to produce a pay policy outlining the pay of its senior officers and the relationship between the highest and lowest paid of its officers, as well as other issues relating to remuneration of senior officers, including salaries, exit payments and other payments. Because of the requirements of a pay policy to publish the pay of senior officers every year, it's been necessary this year to roll together the proposal to regrade the Chief Executive's role into the decision on the policy so that it can be agreed by full Council. So we've been asked in this paper to not only endorse the pay policy as usual, but also to agree to the regrading of the Council's most senior officer. Last year, full Council voted for the reinstatement of the Chief Executive role, following an experiment with having a head of paid service as a sort of first among equals in the lineup of senior directors. In doing so, it was perhaps inevitable that a regrading of that role would be proposed to demarcate the position of Chief Executive, and here we are being asked to endorse that. So the papers that you've got in front of you provide the report of the external assessment of the role and the suggested pay range for the role and responsibilities based on comparisons with other local authorities, given the size and scope of Bristol and its council. You will note that we'll be paying less than other core cities' chief executive salaries, with the average core city's remuneration for a chief exec being over £20,000 a year more than what is being proposed here. On that note, the chief executive will enter at the bottom of the pay range, meaning a £2,000 a year pay increase for the current post holder, in going from the top of the previous range to the bottom of the new one. In common with all senior officers, any increase within the pay band would need to be approved by councillors on the HR committee. Furthermore, there are no bonuses or performance-related pay available to any of our senior officers. I'll stop there because I know that Vice Chair of the committee is going to second this, and then I'll be able to come back in at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd please now like to call Councillor O'Rourke to second the report. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think I'll take all that time because I think John's covered a lot of what I was going to say and stolen some of my best lines. So I'm happy to second this proposal and I recommend voting for it. I think it is important to understand what we're voting for and what we're not voting for. So we are voting, as John said, to approve the pay policy and to allow for the chief executive to be on a higher pay scale than the other 3 executive directors who report to him. So this change was recommended by the LGA because they thought that it would be better than the flat structure that had been put in 2017. And so as a consequence of that, in order to raise the chief executive above, we had to create a new differential pay grade. As John said, it's not a huge amount of money, and most importantly for me and for certainly the rest of people in my group, the 10-to-1 pay ratio is still maintained, and our policy is to continue to maintain that. And that's something that, you know, I think that really is something that the foundation stone that we really wouldn't depart from. What we're not here today to vote about is pay to consultants. And I think it might be the case that some people feel that they can't vote for this because of these issues. But it's a very simple, straightforward thing here today, which is it's the pay policy that is our statutory requirement to vote on. Rolled into it is this new pay differential, which has been explained. And I'm happy to recommend that we vote for that. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move to the debate. I would now like to call upon Councillor Eddy to speak on behalf of the Conservative group. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Lord Mayor, not only all hands in this chamber will recall this annual report used to be fairly uncontroversial. This sadly changed during this course of this current mayoral regime, with Tory and Lib Dem councillors normally voting against it. Under this mayor, the litmus test of this policy has become rewarding the public sector fat cats while making sure those at the bottom of the pile don't appear to suffer too badly. A cynic, or may I say a realist, might argue with this council's transferring some of its worst paid staff to Bristol Waste just to improve the 10-to-1 pay ratio. Otherwise, the policy crystallises the unfair banding system designed to encourage inflation in senior officer pay, whilst the 2,000 quid increase in the chief exec salary is modest in its own right. It heralds a review this year, which could lead to a Trojan horse of senior officer pay rises. Finally, there is no reference at all to interim officer pay or consultants paid off the books. In my view, it is an absolute disgrace that the recent Taxpayers Alliance table of the top 10 nationwide fat cats include a Bristol officer, which is disgraceful. Naturally, Tory councillors will be voting against this policy.
Thank you very much indeed. I would now like to call upon Councillor Hopkins to speak on behalf of the Liberal Democrat group. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I actually will endorse quite a lot of what's just actually been said. I think the position with regard to the chief executive, I realise that the pay rise is not huge, but it's insensitive at the moment, the way, the position that we're actually in, and the fact that we're actually privatising a lot of our staff from security, low-paid jobs. That's not good. But the main reason for this is that year after year, we keep actually saying we do not have a 10-to-1 ratio. We have staff, and in fact, although they're technically agency staff, because they don't appear on the books in quite the same way, in charge of a directorate previously. But with this authority, for I think it's around about 4 years now, at a massively greater pay than anything that's actually disclosed in this report. Now, you can get round the technicality of saying the employed people ratio is this or the 10 to 1, but to not actually recognise the reality of these enormously paid agency staff that have been around for a very long time is actually not good. It actually is not open, it's not transparent, and that's why the Liberal Democrat group cannot vote for this policy.
Thank you. That brings to an end the debate. Councillor Wellington, would you like to respond? You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Yeah, I won't take that long. Yeah, well, the statements from Councillors Eddy and Hopkins reflect what we talked about in the HR committee, the same things they brought up in previous years. All I can do is refer them to Councillor O'Rourke's statement about what we are voting on here and what we're not voting on, and maybe just stick to the evidence of the policy that's presented to us. But fair enough. I respect their views, and we'll go forward on that basis in future years. Anyway, so this pay policy, it was approved by the HR committee, albeit not unanimously, as you can probably tell, who've scrutinised it, and it's had bits pulled out and changed and adapted and rewritten, all as required by councillors, by members of the committee. I think this document demonstrates, the transparency that we want to see from local authorities, and covers most of the ground that's not only legally required for us to produce, but also things that have been requested by councillors, members of the HR committee. All of us are committed to local authority transparency around senior officer pay and for a fair deal for all our lower paid workers. The HR committee, I'm sure, will continue to adapt the pay policy year on year to ensure that this remains the case. And the HR committee's widening role as we go on means that councillors will have greater oversight of employee and workplace issues beyond the usual senior officers' decisions, which we are constituted to oversee, which I think is a good thing. I think that will be a positive going forward. So as Councillor O'Rourke pointed out, this policy means we will remain within our stated aim of keeping a 1 in 10 pay ratio between the lowest paid and highest paid officers, where I think it's about 9.5 of this year. A ratio that has continued to narrow as a trend since 2012. I'll also note that the council pays all employees, including apprentices and trainees, the real living wage, which equates to a lowest full-time salary of just over £18,000 a year. Obviously, still ways to go on that. It's the only way is up on that one, but it's what's in there is positive, and I really hope that members can vote for this pay policy during full council. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. The recommendation is for full council to approve the pay policy statement for 2021-2022. The vote on this item will be taken in the form of a roll call. You are voting on the recommendations, and the names will be read out in alphabetical order. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Abraham. Councillor Don Alexander.
For.
Councillor Leslie Alexander.
Against.
Councillor Beach.
For.
Councillor Bowden Jones.
For.
Councillor Bradshaw.
For.
Councillor Brain.
For.
Councillor Bolton.
Abstain.
Councillor Brooke.
For.
Councillor Breckles.
For.
Councillor Carey.
Against.
Councillor Cheney.
For.
Councillor Barry Clark.
For.
Councillor Stephen Clark.
For.
Councillor Clough.
Against.
Councillor Comley,
For.
Councillor Craig,
For.
Councillor Chris Davies,
Against.
Councillor Mike Davies,
For.
Councillor Denyer,
For.
Councillor Dudd,
For.
Councillor Eddy,
Against.
Councillor Fodor,
For.
Councillor Godwin,
For.
Councillor Goggin,
For.
Councillor Gollop,
Against.
Councillor Goulandris,
Against.
Councillor Hants,
For.
Councillor Hickman,
For.
Councillor Hiscott,
Against.
Councillor Holland,
For.
Councillor Hopkins,
Against.
Councillor Jackson,
For.
Councillor Jammer, Councillor Johnson,
For.
Councillor Jones,
Against.
Councillor Keane,
For.
Councillor Kent,
Against.
Councillor Khan,
Against.
Councillor Kirk,
For.
Councillor Lake,
Abstain.
Councillor Lovell,
For.
Councillor Massey,
For.
Councillor Mead,
Come here, Nick. Come here.
Councillor Malias,
Against.
Councillor Morris,
Against.
Councillor Negus,
Against.
Councillor O'Rourke,
For.
Councillor Pearce,
For.
Councillor Phipps,
For.
Councillor Pickersgill,
For.
Councillor Courtley,
Against.
Councillor Radford,
Against.
Councillor Rippington,
For.
Councillor Sargent,
Abstain.
Councillor Shah,
For.
Councillor Smith,
Against.
Councillor Thomas,
For.
Councillor Threlfall, Councillor Tinknell,
For.
Councillor Wellington,
For.
Councillor Weston,
Against.
Councillor Whittle,
For.
Councillor Windows,
Against.
Councillor Wright,
Against.
Mayor Rees,
For.
Councillor Jammer, can we just scroll down? I think there's someone at the bottom. Okay. Councillor Threlfall, Councillor Mead, Councillor Abraham. I think that's everyone, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. The results are as follows. 38 for, 21 against, 3 abstentions and 1 apologies. Therefore, the report is carried. Thank you very much. I would now like to move to agenda item 10, Scrutiny Annual Report 2020 to 2021. Councillor Gollop, would you like to move the report? You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The last year has been an interesting challenge for all of us, and the Osm Leeds wanted to produce a report that could summarise the year, but also be of help to those who will be running scrutiny after the 6th of May. We recognise scrutiny is on a permanently developing journey with successes and frustrations at every stage. I could highlight the things that went wrong, but would rather concentrate on the positives. We recognise the challenges of sharing information have found the use of more informal task groups to be very beneficial and provide a way where members' skill sets can be used to benefit the authority. And those task groups also work well in areas of policy development. I would just like to highlight Councillor Cheney and the finance team who worked so well with the budget task group and have established a level of trust and openness that would not be present in most other authorities. I thank the officer teams and the other departments who've worked with their respective commissions to also encourage this process. For me, effective and constructive scrutiny is essential for a strong and successful administration. Scrutiny should not be used to oppose administration for the sake of opposition, but backbench councillors can and should have the ability to question decisions taken by the executive. For that reason, my Lord Mayor, I've always ensured that comments that scrutiny submits to Cabinet are representing cross-party consensus rather than one particular party viewpoint. In that spirit, I also welcome Councillor Mead's public forum statement, and Lord Mayor, would just like to add to your comments about those members who will not be seeking re-election. Each and every one of them will leave a very large gap for scrutiny and for the council to fill. Now, scrutiny can only look at a selection of issues during the year. We have to pick our topics carefully and allow time to do them justice. The forward plan is essential to making this work well, and I welcome the engagement from the Executive Office in working to improve this process. I conclude my remarks by reiterating my thanks specifically to Lucy and the scrutiny team, but also to all members involved in scrutiny, particularly the scrutiny chairs, and if I may add to that, Celia Phipps is the Labour Vice Chair, who've been so important in leading the whole scrutiny process. I commend the Scrutiny Annual Report to you. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to move to the debate. I'd like to call upon Councillor Phipps to speak on behalf of the Labour Group. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Firstly, I would also like to thank all the Democratic Services officers involved in scrutiny who have worked so hard throughout this civic year. The scrutiny process wouldn't have functioned without you, so thank you very much. The pandemic and the postponed elections meant that sessions continued throughout the year without a recess, and in new, very different circumstances. Coming to terms with Zoom for the first time was quite a challenge. My thanks too to all the officers in all the directorates who, when invited, provided papers, PowerPoints and presentations for us. We appreciate that this has been a challenging and ever-changing year, and that many of the topics discussed have been of a complex nature. Your role, which enables us to better understand the issues, is invaluable. The scrutiny committees and the Osm board are an important part of council business. They're a key component of the engine room of a council activity. The committees keep an ever watchful eye on decision making and assist in the development and review of council policy. As Jeff says, the work is cross-party and gives time and space for debate and discussion. Sometimes we have to agree to differ. We respect our differences, but ultimately we put the city first. We welcome the inquiring and questioning members of the public to each meeting and value the input they make. So lastly, I would like to thank Councillor Jeff Gollop for his considered and fair role as chair. Thanks to you for herding us, you know, like cats with a stick sometime. And thank you for allowing my cat to be an honorary member of the Scrutiny Commission. Thanks to all the committee chairs for their commitment and attention to the job in hand. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would now like to call upon Councillor Clark to speak on behalf of the Green Group. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. As chair of the Resource Scrutiny Commission, I echo the comments that Jeff has made, and I thank him as well. I hope that the work our various commissions have done has been useful. I give grateful thanks to the members of the Commission and the 2 task and finish groups I've chaired, which have grappled with difficult issues, especially around the impact of COVID on this council. I also give grateful thanks to the officers who've been helpful, cheerful and informative with their advice. This is my last speech to this chamber, as I too have chosen not to stand in the May election. I've been involved in quite a bit of scrutiny over my time here, so please forgive me if I indulge myself with some wider thoughts on the process as it takes place in this council. I think the real truth is that this administration often sees scrutiny as a nuisance to be avoided where possible, and a problem to be nullified where that can't happen. Over the years, I've seen too many comments and ideas which were intended to be helpful put forward by scrutiny members, and on many occasions these have been ignored or run down, often in the press, by this administration. This is a real shame, as valuable skills, expertise and experience exist on the back benches, on this side as well as on the Labour benches. These should be listened to and utilised by the leaders of this council. Whatever our politics, my experience of ordinary councillors is that we all want Bristol to be a welcoming, creative and prosperous place to live. Unfortunately, as well as this problem of not really listening, there seems to me to be a worrying trend to reduce democracy in this council and bring more control into hands that haven't been elected. One obvious piece of evidence for this is the fact that quangos appear to spring up like mushrooms in this corner of the world. The Environmental Sustainability Board, the Culture Board, the Economy and Skills Board, and so on, are all given real influence and power to shape decision makings and priorities in Bristol. These boards may indeed be doing great work, but they're not democratic. And this means that the vast majority of their members will not have to face the electorate in May. They're also spending public money and need to be accountable. An example of this, which neatly illustrates the point, is the Western Harbour Advisory Group. This group contains precisely none of the councillors.
Councillor, you have 30 seconds left. Thank you.
Why is that? Maybe because none of them are Labour. I invite you to draw your own conclusions. Anyway, I'll end by saying it's been a privilege to be part of this chamber. I've enjoyed it immensely, and I wish the best of good luck to those who will work here after May the 6th. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed. I would now like to call upon Councillor Negus to speak on behalf of the Liberal Democrat Group. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lord Mayor, and well done, Jeff, for a very polite and business-like report. As you know, I always enjoy scrutiny because it's the place where we all work together, and for Bristol at its best, and so it should be. I want to say a special thanks to the officers, particularly the Democratic Services officers. They've been absolutely great at times where it's frankly been more testing than it should have been for them, and they've come up trumps, always smiling, and it's been truly great. I also welcome Councillor Clark's remarks and Clive Stevens' support earlier on. I see scrutiny as being pretty simple. I think we should be looking at the overview and the initiatives, and that should come out of inquiry days. I think the commissions should examine policy proposals, and the task and finish group should frankly deal with quite small single issues. But the one thing we don't deal with enough, which I've made a point along the years that we should be doing better, is that OSM is the best place to try to do some silo busting across the departments. If we have a big issue, then OSM is the place that ought to look outside that issue as well to make sure that everybody is trying to deliver the policy. And all of these things, all of these remarks should be reviewed, of course, by the large new intake next year. Now, scrutiny is to help to achieve better outcomes. It should be trusted and it should be freed to operate. We've heard tonight a remark about collaboration. This city's captain is clearly not a team player, not even with his own teammates. Scrutiny efforts to be proactive and timely have often been blocked, and I think the remarks we just heard earlier bear that out. There is too much power locked inside the top-heavy mayor's office, which is over-controlled by the captain and the manager. We can do better than this, and for the best of Bristol, we should do better than this. Scrutiny has a major part to play. Let's really make it work much, much better and much more freely, transparently, and democratically than I've been sadly, and all of us have been sadly had to put up with for some considerable time. And I see no sign of it getting better. We've got to change the system to improve this. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Gollop, do you wish to sum up as the mover of the report? If so, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I would just like to add a few words. And I've heard the debate, and I have personal views on a lot of the things that have been said. But I recognise that I'm speaking tonight as Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Management, and therefore representing everybody who's played a part in that group. I also recognise that within the organisation, members of Cabinet and senior officers are fully aware of the benefits of strong scrutiny. And I think there is a collective challenge for the organisation that when everybody agrees we need strong scrutiny, we have to work out how we make that happen. And that can't be done by scrutiny alone, not least because scrutiny has to know what decisions are being taken and able to actually then scrutinise them. We've talked about policy development. The roles are enormous for a positive role in that. And I don't understand why any administration shouldn't welcome scrutiny being involved in policy development before it becomes party political. So the potential is enormous, but I don't want to underestimate what this report shows, which is actually there's a danger we put ourselves down and don't recognise how much scrutiny has achieved, albeit it's got further to go. But there's a lot of room to be positive, but there's still room for improvement. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. The recommendation is for Council to note the report. Thank you. Council notes the report. That concludes agenda item 10. There will now be an adjournment of 15 minutes. We will start back again at 8:05. Please return promptly. Thank you very much. Thank you very much and welcome back. At this point in the meeting, we suspect that the motions are likely to take us past the 30 minutes allowed for this item. Therefore, the meeting is likely to run past the 2.5 hours allowed within the Constitution. So what I would like to suggest at this point is that we finish at 9 o'clock, which means that we have time to go through the first motion, and then if we are timely and quick, we can get through the second motion within about 15 minutes. Can I take that that's agreed? Do I have anybody voting against that notion? Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll proceed on that basis of a finish time of 9 o'clock. So I'd now like to move to agenda item 11, which is the Mayoral Referendum. The motion will be shown on the screen now. The motion can also be found on the website published as part of the agenda. Thank you. Please may I ask Councillor Hopkins on behalf of the Liberal Democrat group to move the motion. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Let's get straight right from the beginning that this motion is not about any individual party or individual, but is very much about the democratic rights of Bristolians that we should all be representing. This motion also does not say get rid of the mayor. It says allow Bristolians the democratic right that has been won for them to choose the method of governance of their council. Elected mayors have been around for some years and many had been dispensed with, but unfortunately, when the Tories back in 2010-11 wanted to expand the number, they completely missed out the right for citizens to think again after they had seen the new system in practice. 10 cities were asked, 9 said no, and Bristol said yes, with 13% saying yes and 12% saying no. Most voters had no interest or no knowledge, so stayed at home. But the Tories managed to get a higher turnout in the areas where their support was strongest. Not even the promise of extra devolved powers and money, which of course never happened, could persuade 87% of the need for a mayor. Bristol, being the only council with no right of reverse or review, was widely seen as unfair, and a smart amendment in the House of Lords, a unanimous vote of this council to demand the right, and a successful cross-party lobby of the community secretary got Bristol the right to a referendum review after 10 years. It was noticeable that not all those that supported the call for the right wanted rid of the mayor system. The then mayor voted for it, but they saw it as fair and democratic. I hope everybody today will vote to allow Bristolians to exercise their democratic rights. The time to argue about whether or not the experiment has been beneficial, although I'm sure some following will make good points, is when we have the referendum. The public now have seen the two alternatives, and they may even want to move on to a third later, and are far better equipped to make a judgment. Not surprisingly, the present mayor has imposed a whip upon the Labour members, and those of us who are in parties that do things differently should not underestimate the courage it will take.
You have 30 seconds left, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you. For any Labour member to put democracy and principle in front of personal advancement. I thank them in anticipation. No whip has been used in our party. I wish to address those who recognise the need for the referendum, but would prefer a committee system. I'd actually put in a draft motion requesting that we deal with the principle now and work out the detail afterwards, but our legal officer actually refused to allow that. So basically, it is though far
easier.
easier.
To a close now, please. Thank you.
It is far easier to move from one democratic system to the other. I urge every member here to support the right of Bristolians to choose and put party and individual advantage to one side.
Thank you very much. I now call upon Councillor Davies to speak on behalf of the Labour Group to second the motion. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I rise to second this very important cross-party motion. You know, I was going through some old paperwork recently when I found some of the leaflets for my campaign in 2016. Looking at them made me feel so sad. There's been such a disparity between my hopes before I got elected and the reality of being a councillor under the mayoral system. It's been a demoralising experience, and I know that's true not just for me, but for many others. Future councillors shouldn't have to go through what we've gone through. When people want to make a contribution to public service, that's something to be encouraged. Yet under the mayoral system, so much enthusiasm, talent and expertise has gone wasted. It's no wonder that so many good councillors have made the decision to step down. Councillors are not a relic of the past or an inconvenience, despite being made to feel that way much of the time. The reason we have councillors and why we've had councillors for hundreds of years is so that communities, wherever they are in the city, can have a genuine voice when decisions are made. But for the most part, the mayoral system has minimised the role to one of responding to complaints and undertaking casework. Without being able to effectively realise change in a consistent and transparent way that rewards effort and creativity, our role is hollow and our communities are let down. Politics is not just about delivery. Democracy is not just the most efficacious means to an end. Democracy is about morality and justice, about everybody having the right to have their say and contribute to our shared endeavour. The leader and cabinet system may not be perfect, but it is a huge improvement on the mayoral system, because crucially, it means that the leader of the council is accountable to the council, so that democracy is not just a once in 4 year event. We can change to the committee system at a later time if we so choose, as other places have. This isn't about party politics. Everybody in this chamber should feel able to make up their own mind and vote with their conscience. That's what our constituents elected us to do.
Thank you.
And crucially, we're not deciding today to abolish the mayoral system. We are voting on whether to give Bristolians the choice over the future of democracy in their city. Because, my Lord Mayor, if the mayoral system has been such a self-evident success, and this is so obvious to Bristolians, its supporters should have nothing to worry about.
Thank you very much indeed. We now hear from the speakers on the motion. I'd first of all like to call upon Councillor Johnson to speak on behalf of the Labour Group. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I appreciate that the premise of this motion is a referendum, but as the Lib Dems and the Tories are both campaigning on abolishing the mayor, I feel I really must share some facts about the proposed alternative. Under the mayoral model, we're actually getting...
Councillor,
yes?
we can hardly hear you. If you can turn your volume up or move closer to your microphone, that would really help. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move it closer. Do I get my time back? Or do I have to... Shall I start again?
Yes, please.
Okay. Right. Okay. Can you hear me now, Lord Mayor?
Yes, yes, please. Can you get on?
Thanks. Okay, right. So I appreciate the premise of the motion is a referendum, but as the Lib Dems and Tories are both campaigning on abolishing the mayor, I really feel that I must share some facts about their proposed alternative. Under the mayoral model, we're actually getting things done. Just look at the size of the cabinet papers as evidence. Compare and contrast the most recent cabinet meeting with one completed at the same point in a year before the citizens of Bristol democratically voted for a mayoral model. For example, the 9th of March 2021, there were 29 items. On the 3rd of March in 2011, there were only 9 items. This is not a one-off, it's a reoccurring, and I'd encourage you to look for yourself. A persistent theme of the leader cabinet model is inaction. The Labour mayor is getting stuff done. The last Lib Dem administration, not so much. Councillors will have to ask themselves what matters more to Bristolians, the process or the product. The previous system was not only unproductive, but unstable and unaccountable too. Prior to the mayor, we had 7 council leaders in 10 years. I don't believe Bristolians want to go back to a system plagued with constant instability. Also, in the leader cabinet model, the city leader would represent a single ward rather than the entire city, and their mandate would only be around 2,000 votes. If you didn't like the city leader, you probably wouldn't have the opportunity to vote them out either. In contrast, the mayor's mandate is about 140,000 votes, a return to unproductive, unstable, undemocratic local government. Why would we do that? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That would be madness. Some of the Lib Dems have made comparisons of the mayor to Putin. That's interesting, when they are the ones who are trying to abolish a position that they think they'll lose.
Councillor, you have 30 seconds left. Thank you.
It seems quite detached that the Tories and Lib Dems have spent the year focusing on constitutional issues, where's the focus on COVID or the fallout of COVID? If Bristolians want a referendum on the mayor, they can call for one if they gather enough support. If they want to, they should. Direct democracy is a great thing. As councillors, the Labour
Can you draw to a close now, please, Councillor? Thank you.
Will continue delivering on Bristol's priorities instead of just rehashing decade-old arguments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to call upon Councillor Smith to speak on behalf of the Conservative group. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. And I'd like to start actually by paying tribute to the speech we just heard from Councillor Davis. I thought that was excellent and a brave and difficult speech to make. So respect from me for that. Now, we hear often, very, very often from our friends in the Liberal Democrats about how much better things were when they ran the city. It's not what I remember. Now, I wasn't on the council in 2012, but I recall a council that was stuck in the mud, where decisions didn't get made, where projects came to die. And that's why I voted in 2012 to change the system. But in 2012, we changed 2 things about the way we run this city. Yes, we switched from a leader to a separately elected mayor. We also changed the electoral system from voting in thirds to voting the entire council in as one through a 4-year term. And I think the implication of that, the change that has made is often understated. It's that change to a full 4-year term that has moved us to a position away from that place where nothing could ever get done to the place where we can have stability and we can make decisions. It doesn't matter, actually, as far as that's concerned, whether the person making those decisions is a leader or a mayor. What gives us that stability is having a full 4-year term, and no one is proposing that we change that. What switching from a leader to a separately elected mayor did, though, is take away the accountability from the person at the top. If a council leader, accountable to the councillors, had bulldozed through, as the last one did, a resident parking scheme and the whole council had voted against it, they could be removed from their role. If a council leader had lost £50 million of taxpayers' money in a failed venture and risked losing a chunk more refurbishing a concert hall, they could be removed from their role. And if a council leader had been accused publicly by multiple members of their own party of presiding over a culture of bullying and intimidation, they could be removed from their role. A mayor can do all of these things and there's no consequence. They just carry on regardless. The Prime Minister of this country serves only with the approval of Parliament. The leaders of most of our local authorities serve only with the approval of their councils. The mayor requires nobody's approval. Once elected, a mayor can come in and do what they want for 4 years, short of committing a serious offence and being sent to prison. Nobody can do anything to touch them. And the thing is, this referendum is inevitable. It is going to happen. There are petitions circulating already that will make it happen if we don't vote for it tonight. You can't stop it by voting against this motion. So the choice you've got is, do you get ahead of this issue? Do you do the right thing and put this choice back to the people of
You have
Bristol?
30 seconds left. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Or do you bury your head in the sand, vote against it tonight and be dragged kicking and screaming to the polls next year when petitions come round? That's the choice you've got tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I would now like to call upon Councillor Fodor to speak on behalf of the Green Group. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We're here just before the city election with 2 of the mayoral candidates having no other policies to improve the city, but standing on a self-abolition agenda. Funnily enough, they want the outgoing council to debate a motion committing us to a referendum on abolition versus one specific leader cabinet option. As a Green, I know there are loads of things wrong with the current mayor's ways of working and the marginalisation of most elected councillors. I'd be far happier with a Green mayor delivering meaningful, positive change and real action for the city in a collaborative way. Of course, there's loads to debate about how to run the city better, to achieve a fairer, sustainable, thriving city. I'd like to have that discussion so everyone can work out the pros and cons of different, more democratic ways to achieve positive change and recovery in the city, and to tackle the climate and ecological emergencies. But let's be clear, the legal basis for this vote tonight isn't a debate on better democracy and governance. It isn't a judgment on the flaws of the current administration, which many councillors on all sides have made very clear they are fed up with. It doesn't recognise the contradictory statements of those candidates, the other candidates, on Twitter about what they'd like to see. Our Chief Legal Officer has said if the council votes tonight for this motion, the Local Government Act 2000 actually means it does bind the hands of the future executive and council. It locks us into a referendum with voters offered only the 2 choices being quoted, not a change. It precludes a proper debate on better democracy and the pros and cons of different systems and other models, like committees. No chance for review. What it does is it stops us changing our minds for years. And Greens aren't satisfied with this. Most of us aren't going to support it, therefore. We've ensured there's a citizens' assembly to help engage residents from all walks of life. The incoming council needs to have a serious discussion with residents about how to run the city better in an inclusive, collaborative way. We're clearly not happy with the status quo, but our party doesn't bully or pile on our members for different opinions.
You have 30 seconds left, Councillor.
Sure.
Thank you.
Most of us will either reject it outright, since our party policy favours a more inclusive committee system, or will abstain on this bad use of council time at this point. But as Greens, we will have a free vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would now like to call upon Councillor Kent to speak on behalf of the Liberal Democrat Group. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And can I just say what a powerful speech I thought that was earlier by Councillor Davis. I hope a lot of people will listen to that. That could not have been easy to make. I know Councillor Davis is stepping down. I hope he will return to the chamber one day, even if that's as a Labour member. But, you know, there's always other options out there. If not now, when? Is that not a legitimate question that many, I would say the vast majority of our residents would ask if you turn this down tonight? I'd say if you choose to turn this down tonight, it won't occur. This is your chance. This is your opportunity. We know the vast majority of residents of our city are not happy with the mayoral system. They do not think it provides effective leadership. The reason we know that, because they tell us that every year in the Quality of Life survey. Every year they tell us that. Maybe it's time we started to listen. And let's be honest, we know that in our hearts as councillors. I know many of you have been told to vote another way. I know probably many of you will. If you dig deep, you know the truth. Just one council has adopted the mayoral system since Bristol did. 1. 3 councils have thrown it out. I want you to think about that. Since the vast majority of councils don't run the mayoral system, you would have thought it would be the other way around if it was such a great success. So let's try and put aside the political manoeuvring, the electoral alliances. Look, this is not in our interests to vote this year. As has been pointed out, this is our main campaigning platform. We're willing to shoot ourselves in the foot tonight and get this through. Let's put this aside. Let's talk about roads. Let's talk about housing. The mayor's always keen to talk about housing. Let's go there. Let's put this aside and vote for this, lock this in for the citizens of Bristol. And that's all we're asking. We're not saying what the outcome will be. It will be down to them. And in reality, these sort of polls are 50-50 on whether people actually support moving to a different model or retaining the mayoral system. I don't think personally the mayoral system has brought these great improvements that others have argued. But in one sense, I say that's not the argument for tonight. For tonight, it's a simple argument.
You have 30 seconds left, Councillor. Thank you.
Do we let the residents of Bristol have a choice in 2022? On those who have argued about the committee system, you know the truth. There is not the votes for that in the chamber. And it's just a delaying tactic to get away from this in some strange hope that a Green mayor is going to get elected. We all know that it's not going to be a Green mayor elected. You also know that you would have a choice in the future to move to the committee system if you wanted to. So I hope you'll put the city first tonight. I know that's hard. I know a lot of people have been whipped hard tonight. I hope you'll listen to what Councillor Davis had to say and vote for the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would now like to call upon Councillor Sargent to speak as an independent member. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd just also like to pay tribute to my fantastic colleague, Mike Davis, for his brave speech. He'll be a great loss to the council. But we are stuck with the mayoral system until 2024. This motion won't change that. We're all going to have to vote, have a vote for the mayor this May. Despite this, the proposers seem desperate to rush through this major, irreversible decision right at the end of our non-elected year due to COVID, leaving the consequences to the next council, of which many of us won't be members. I'm also disappointed that the proposers feel that getting this motion through before the end of this council term is worth us being stuck with the results until 2032. Yes, we will not be able to consider another alternative method of governance for 10 years. This motion forces the council to offer the residents of Bristol a choice between retaining the mayoral system and reverting to the previous system of leader and cabinet without even considering the committee system of governance, with a referendum 2 years before the resulting changes need to be implemented. Leader and cabinet feels to me like going back into the frying pan from the fire, which I agree would be an improvement on the mayoral model. But since we have 3 years, why can't we strive for something better? We could look at modernising the traditional committee model in a way that would encourage collective leadership and move us away from the party political bickering and the cult of personality associated with single person leadership models, which I personally feel are very dated. This motion is a missed opportunity because of its haste to get a referendum booked when it could instead have asked the council to set up a commission to consider both the alternative systems and make recommendations to full council. Involvement could have been expanded to include ex-councillors like me, citizens' assemblies, our excellent youth council and our academic institutions. Following the Commission's report, either the same motion before us today or one replacing the words leader and cabinet with committee system could be brought to full council, allowing a referendum to take place in May 2023. If successful, that would give our excellent democratic services team 12 months to put the resulting
30 seconds left, Councillor.
in place in time for May 2024. We have 3 years to prepare for a potential change in governance. Let's make the most of it and make sure we offer the people of Bristol the better of the two alternatives to the mayoral model. Democracy rules.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to call upon Councillor Kirk to speak on behalf of the Labour Group. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Well, as a retiring councillor, I'm certainly not speaking looking for personal advancement, but I am speaking from my own experience and very freely of my experience of the mayoral model, and I'd like to support that. I think strong city leadership is extremely important because people identify much more closely with the area where they live, and they can relate to a locally accountable, directly elected mayor. And city mayors have a stronger voice on both the national and international stage. We have to judge the mayoral model by what it achieves in creating strong and place-based civic leadership. And I want to talk a bit about the One City office because this is vital to civic leadership. It taps into the resources, energy and ideas of a whole city, a range of partners including businesses, universities, charities, community leaders, faith groups and regular citizens and volunteers. The One City office under our mayoral model is sometimes criticised or even feared as an alternative power structure to the council, but I disagree with this. I see it much more as unlocking extra capacity, extra resources, extra commitment to benefit our city. It's a platform for discussion, shared effort and collaboration. Having clear priorities and a long-term One City plan avoids political short-termism. It helps us to deal with the wider problems the council cannot solve on its own when we have a Tory government that persistently underfunds councils and we're dealing with the double economic whammy of Brexit and COVID. Through the pandemic, we've seen the failures of an over-centralised approach from the government, wasting millions by outsourcing from the centre and sidelining the experience and expertise of local councils. But in Bristol, by contrast, the shared purpose of dealing with the COVID crisis has brought all our city partners together into a huge collaborative effort. The city has literally pulled together under Marvin's civic leadership. This includes our public health teams and our reaching into communities to engage more people in the vaccine programme, and all the city partners who have pulled together to get food and essentials to those in need, find accommodation for the homeless, distribute computers to disadvantaged children, and find ways to protect the vulnerable and isolated. Throughout this time, the Mayor has had the public recognition to lead from the front, regularly sharing with citizens vital updates and health information. Because we already had strong partnerships built through the One City office, we were able to mobilise quickly and hit the ground running. And I also just quickly want to say that in the last 4 years, we've expanded democratic engagement, wider consultation, citizens' assembly. All these sorts of new models have become possible under the mayoral model. And so I prefer this fully accountable way of working, and I do not want to go back to the old-fashioned power battles and frequent logjams of our previous system of local politics. We will not be supporting a referendum to end the mayoral system. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I would now like to call upon Councillor Hiscox to speak on behalf of the Conservative Group. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I'm not intending to use the full 3 minutes because I think I've heard some really amazing points made today, particularly from Councillor Mike Davis. And I'd like to say to him, I share that disappointment with you, as when I became a councillor within the mayoral model, I was incredibly disappointed to find that you could bring a motion to council and have 70 people agree, and yet one person, as the mayor, ignore those views. And so I really share that, Mike, and you were very brave to say what you said. I was also quite concerned about what Councillor Johnson said. It was almost as though she was suggesting that the ends justifies the means. Sometimes getting stuff done is great, as long as it's the right stuff you're getting done and you take people with you. So I'd question that one. I'm interested about people feeling that this wouldn't be democratic, that we wouldn't be giving people enough time to think about it. I totally disagree with that. democracy evolves, and sometimes we get it right. Sometimes we think, oh no, that didn't go so well, we need to tweak that. And a lot of people think that the current mayoral system is not working so well, but quite rightly, other people may think it's fantastic. This motion just allows for a referendum, some planning. Instead of rushing into it, it would be during a non-election year, which would be fantastic. I would say to support this motion because democracy evolves and it thrives on change. What we see in Bristol currently is a system where one person can make a decision and 70 people elected across the city can do nothing to change it.
30 seconds left, Councillor, thank you.
Thank you. What we've seen evolve is a regional mayoral system, a metro mayor, if you like. In Wecker, it is ruled by consensus, not by one person. And that's an interesting form of democracy, and one which I feel probably supersedes this. But what I'm going to say is, let people decide. Bristol loves to have its say. So this motion would allow Bristolians to plan, to think, and to change.
Can you draw to a close now, please? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to call upon Councillor Thomas to speak on behalf of the Green Group. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Bristol chose the system of an elected mayor in a referendum because the old political system didn't get things done, whether it was trams, buses, residents parking or a city arena. Green Party policy nationally supports the committee system of city government, but we will work within whichever system has popular support, including the mayoral system. We now have two problems with the mayoral system in Bristol: the way the system was set up and the way our elected mayor has behaved. In the way the system was set up, Bristol's elected mayor has too much power and elected councillors have too little. This wouldn't matter so much if we had a mayor who listened to the views of councillors, but since 2017 that's not what we have. That was when Labour ended the Rainbow Cabinet, which included representatives from all the major parties. Instead of listening to the views of all councillors, at key moments the mayor decides what he would like to do and ignores the views of councillors. Councillors voted for a city centre arena, but Mayor Rees decided that he would not build an arena at Temple Island. And in December, Council passed a Green Party motion stating that Bristol's airport expansion was incompatible with our climate targets and must not go ahead. Then last month, Mayor Rees, representing the council, told Wecker that his view was that expansion should go ahead, and he joined together with the Conservatives in the region to continue to support its expansion. This combination of a lack of councillor input, combined with the ending of the Rainbow Cabinet, has had a terrible impact on the quality of leadership in Bristol, whether it's the arena, air quality improvement, airport, Bristol Energy or Cumberland Basin. And I've only got to C in the alphabet. Labour's dictatorial approach won't be fixed simply by moving away from the mayoral system. In Sheffield, the city has a leader and cabinet system, which is what the Lib Dems are recommending now. And in Sheffield, the city has the same problem with an undemocratic Labour Party as we do here. As a result, they're having a referendum, with the Sheffield Lib Dems proposing to replace the leader and cabinet model with a committee-based system. You have an opportunity to change the political culture in the coming mayoral election by voting Green for Sandy Horrivan. He has a clear view of how we'd like to change the city for the better.
Councillor Thomas, this is not about electioneering. This is not a platform to electioneer. So can you cease doing that? Thank you. Or cease your speech. Thank you.
And he commits to adhering to the views of full council when represented by a 2/3 majority. So on balance, the Green Group of councillors believe the right time to review our system of governance will be after this election, not before it. That will give the incoming councillors and mayor more than 5 hurried days to propose any particular improvements that they believe are needed in the way the city is run. For this reason, I will be voting against the motion.
I'd now like to move to ask the Mayor if he would like to speak. You have 3 minutes, Mayor Rees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, it's a very interesting collection of arguments. First of all, I'm shocked anyone is still arguing it would be a good idea for us to have spent £200 million on a city centre arena that we couldn't open in the middle of a pandemic. But there you go. You can make your judgments on that front. Look, and I think I would disagree. I think that Bristol City Council should be about delivery. It's what the city is needed. It's what people need in terms of homes, child hunger, poverty, the city's aspiration. Supporting our industry. If our conversation is about how we serve ourselves, then I think we've lost the plot. I think in many ways, the truth is that the needs of a modern city like Bristol outgrew the old model of operation, be it on climate change, delivering homes, tackling child hunger. We were kind of almost a quango of invisible meetings that did not make real decisions at the pace at which they needed to be made. That led to a growing frustration that was out there in the city, and I was part of that frustration, seeing a city that was not meeting the needs of the population, and the model that we operated in needed to catch up. This organisation is not about the needs of me or the councillors. It is about the needs of Bristol, and what we need to be doing is looking at what a modern city needs and building a leadership organisation that is actually suited to delivering on those needs, not just talking about itself. There is that phrase, isn't it? Form follows function. What we seem to be indulging here is an effort to build the function irrespective build the form, irrespective of the function that we should be serving. That is the wrong way around. We have a growing population. We need to get out of recession. We have rapid urbanization and existing crises. We need an organisation that can respond at the pace and with the flexibility that's needed. And what we need is the skill set within the mayoral role, within elected members that can actually focus on delivery and not just talking to itself. I recognise there's a challenge for councillors in how they fit in this role. These were questions I raised in 2012, that you can't just take a mayoral model, retrofit it and expect everything to work. But I would just suggest that rather than trying to drag the council back 15 years, we should look at how we, as a collection of elected representatives, build the skills and culture to deliver for the city as it is today. We also should take this debate outside the chamber and talk to our key city partners about delivery.
You have 30 seconds left, thank you.
Thank you. Our business community, our voluntary community sector, those people who come to the city gathering. And then just finally, what this fundamentally is an effort to take the decision for the political leader of Bristol back into the chamber to a small number of councillors in an anonymous committee room. This is a directly elected role by the citizens of Bristol. So that's what this is. This is an attempt to take the council back to when a small number of councillors elected the political leader and it was off to the periphery of city leadership. It's a directly elected role, and that's the most democratic and the visibility of it is the most democratic intervention we've had for a long time. There is no day. And I grew up in the city.
To a close now, please. Thank you.
There was no day in Bristol City Council's history when this council represented fantastic democracy. Remember, I grew up in a community, one of many communities that was ignored, and bypassed by this organisation, and we've changed that.
Thank you. I'd now like to call upon Councillor Hopkins. Would you like to respond to the debate as the mover of the motion? You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Well, Marvin knows best, obviously, rather than asking the people what they want. And that's quite an important differentiation. Unfortunately, it looks like the Green Party are going to want to go for a talking shop rather than actually doing something. So we might well lose this vote, which would be a terrible pity, because this vote is not just about whether we have a mayor. It is whether we give the right to Bristolians to actually choose how they're governed. That's what it's about. The Tories made a heck of a mess of this right at the beginning, but give them credit. They've learned from the lesson, and they've seen things in action, and they've realised that things had to change. This should be a matter of conscience, how we all vote today. Those who abstain or vote against this motion will not just be voting to support the present mayoral system, but they're voting to prevent the public in Bristol being able to exercise their democratic right. The evidence that the public want to dump the mayor system is fairly clear, but let's debate the detail of it when we actually get for the public to actually choose, not when we're in a position of trying to prevent them having the choice. I think it's unfortunate that when you look at, as was pointed out earlier, the number of councillors from both the Labour Party and the Green Party who are actually leaving this council, and they will not be in a position where they have to face the consequences of this vote if they vote down this motion. I think that it's a very unfortunate thing to come in, do one term of office and then leave without actually listening to those who've been around for a few years. I've actually served under all systems, that's committee and under the leader and cabinet and under the mayor system. And I've got nothing against the committee system, but it's not a panacea. And basically what we should all agree on is that, and I'm hearing it from people who are not going to actually vote for this, that the present system is not working. So I would say to the Green Party in particular, do not just put this into the long grass. If you want to actually move to a committee system afterwards, that's quite feasible from a leader and cabinet. And actually,
you have 30 seconds left, Councillor. Thank you.
Joe, it's not true that we'll be another 10 years. Check the legislation, you'll find out. It can't happen immediately, but it's not another 10 years because we checked. So basically, we cannot have a position continuing where 100% of the power is concentrated in one pair of hands. We get bad decisions and we get then things that have to be undone afterwards. Bristolians want their say, and I'd urge everybody here tonight.
You draw to a close now, please, and thank you.
We give the power to the people, which is what we should be saying. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now move to the vote. The vote on the motion will be a named vote by way of a roll call. The names will be read out in alphabetical order and the results will be shown at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Don Alexander.
Against.
Councillor Leslie Alexander.
For.
Councillor Beach.
Against.
Councillor Bowden Jones.
For.
Councillor Bradshaw.
Against.
Councillor Brain. Councillor Bolton.
For.
Councillor Brooke.
Against.
Councillor Breckles.
Against.
Councillor Carey.
For.
Councillor Cheney.
Against.
Councillor Barry Clark.
Against.
Councillor Stephen Clark.
Abstain.
Abstain. Councillor Clough.
For.
Councillor Comley.
Against.
Councillor Craig.
Against.
Councillor Chris Davies.
For.
Councillor Mike Davies.
For.
Councillor Denyer.
Against.
Councillor Dudd.
Against.
Councillor Eddy.
For.
Councillor Fodor.
Against.
Councillor Godwin.
Against.
Councillor Goggin.
Against.
Councillor Gollop.
For.
Councillor Goulandris.
For.
Councillor Hants.
Abstain.
Councillor Hickman. Councillor Hickman.
Hello, against.
Councillor Hiscott.
For.
Councillor Holland.
Against.
Councillor Hopkins.
Or.
Councillor Jackson.
Against.
Councillor Jammer.
Against.
Councillor Johnson.
Against.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Keane.
Against.
Councillor Kent.
For.
Councillor Khan.
For.
Councillor Kirk.
Against.
Councillor Lake.
Abstain.
Councillor Lovell.
Against.
Councillor Massey.
Against.
Councillor Mead.
Councillor Malias.
4.
Councillor Morris.
4.
Councillor Negus.
4.
Councillor O'Rourke.
Against.
Councillor Pearce.
Against.
Councillor Phipps.
Against.
Councillor Pickersgill.
Against.
Councillor Courtley.
4.
Councillor Radford.
4.
Councillor Rippington.
Against.
Councillor Sargent.
Against.
Councillor Shah. Councillor Shah.
Councillor Shah.
Voting against.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Thelfall. Councillor Tinknell.
Against.
Councillor Wellington.
Against.
Councillor Weston.
4.
Councillor Whittle.
Against.
Councillor Windows.
4.
Councillor Wright.
4.
Mayor Rees.
Against.
Councillor Threlfall. Councillor Mead. Councillor Brain. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
The votes are as follows. For is 24, against 35, 3 abstentions and 2 apologies. The motion is lost. Thank you. At this stage, we were hoping to move on to the silver motion, but we've got 7 minutes left, so clearly we are not able to do that. What I was going to propose is that we extend the time of the meeting for another 20 minutes to hear the silver motion. Do I have anybody voting against that?
Against.
I was rather looking to the whips or the leaders for some consensus there.
I'm happy with that proposal.
Conservatives are happy with that proposal.
Fine with us.
Sorry, Charlie.
So, sorry, Councillor Hants, what did you say? You're agreeing to it?
I am indeed, with apologies to Councillor Bolton.
Okay, thank you. You've got, and also Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, we're happy.
You're happy as well. Okay, so I propose that we extend for another 20 minutes, which will take us to 9:15. So we now move to the silver motion, Bristol's Clean Air Zone Western Boundary. The motion will now be shared on the screen. The motion can be found on the website published as part of the agenda. Thank you. Please may I call upon Councillor Weston of the Conservative Group to move the motion. You have 3 minutes, and if you can keep it shorter, we will all be most grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I suspect at this time of the evening brevity will be rewarded. We'll wait to see whether that's rewarded in votes. First of all, could I thank Councillor Dudd? May seem strange, considering we tend to tear each other's apart. He and I have had several conversations over recent weeks around the Clean Air Zone. I appreciate very much his taking the time to discuss it with me, because obviously there's a complex issue. I think the Mayor was right, which often isn't something that I say, and I'm glad that he sat down to hear those words. The CAS itself is a very blunt instrument, and I don't think it's perfect at all. I think we have the problem where the courts force the government force the council, but in the end, it's the public that it causes problems for. And I think that the inclusion of the portway in the CAS is one of those where it's going to cause problems. And I suspect that the Mayor doesn't want it included if he was honest. He doesn't want to do this at all, I would imagine, not in the run-up to an election anyway. So we have a situation where, with the inclusion of the Portway, you have a major north-south arterial road, which wasn't above the legal limits, being brought in, and that causes problems. Because I think, first of all, it'll cause problems for those travelling for jobs. Then it'll cause problems when we're talking about haulage of moving around the city, connecting Port to South Bristol. I think it's going to deflect an awful lot of traffic onto secondary and suburban roads that just simply aren't designed to take it. So the question for us is, what do? We have obviously made private representations. We've done it for a while. I know the mayor, he was talking earlier on, he's made representations. So what this motion now, and we've written it as congenially as we can to try and bring as broad a support as we can, it's to try and show some cross-party and cross-chamber support for this proposal, that we lobby the government, ask them to review the evidence and the pack within all the legal confines. We even had to alter our motion to make sure that it was happy with the legal officers, to look at whether the Portway can be removed. So we can stop the economic and the social dislocation that we think including it will do. So that's what we're hoping to do. So all we're asking today is some cross-party support from people. We ask the government to consider everything we've sent, consider the representations we make today, look at the evidence we've got, and whether we can remove the Portway and restore that north-south interchange that we fear is going to be damaged. So that's what I'm doing. I propose the motion. Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm under my 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, and most grateful we are too. I'd now like to call upon Councillor Galandrist of the Conservative Group to second the motion. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I too shall be brief. It gives me great pleasure to second this excellent motion. Clean air. It's a no-brainer. Everybody in Bristol wants cleaner air. The CAS proposals as submitted should improve air quality in the city centre, but there's a real risk that by including the Portway in the CAS, polluting vehicles will simply be rerouted through the suburbs to avoid paying the hefty £9 charge. So cleaner air in the city centre, but much dirtier air for Shirehampton, Seamills, Lawrence Weston, Stoke Bishop, Westbury and Clifton. That's environmental hypocrisy, robbing Peter in the suburbs to pay Paul in the city centre. The Mayor has quite rightly said that the CAS is a blunt instrument. I agree totally. The purpose of this motion is to make the CAS less of a blunt instrument by writing on a cross-party basis to the minister responsible with our concerns. It really would be environmental madness to achieve cleaner air in the city centre at the cost of more pollution in the suburbs. So this motion is an attempt to ensure that all parts of Bristol benefit from the introduction of a more intelligent CAS. Accordingly, I hope that all members will be able to support this motion. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed. We now hear from the speakers on the motion. I'd first of all like to call Councillor Dudd to speak on behalf of the Labour Group. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And it's quite an interesting one, this motion. The Conservative Group asking the Labour administration to lobby their own governments was quite an interesting one, really. I guess the Conservative Group could speak to the minister themselves and use their influence to get some changes potentially. But obviously, you obviously need our help on this. Joking aside, that was a joke. It's a serious issue. It's a serious public health issue. Clean air. There's been 3 High Court rulings on this issue, lost by the government. And a couple of weeks ago, there was a ruling by the European Court as well, one of the last cases that was still being heard, which underlined the previous rulings and upheld those previous rulings. So there's a strong legal underpinning to the action that we've taken here in Bristol. The Mayor was right to point out 2/3 of vehicles won't be affected by the scheme that we're introducing. We've also lobbied quite hard to get a scheme of loan and grants introduced, and also in terms of the mitigation problem, we've made it clear on a number of occasions that any surplus that is derived from the clean air zone, we'll use to try and deal with some of the displaced traffic issues that may occur from this by livable neighbourhoods and other means as well. We did take our time to carefully consider all the options around the clean air zone. We did get criticised at the time, but what that allowed us to do is obviously argue for those loans and grants. It also allowed us to bring forward the compliance year from 2028 to 2023, and also look at exemptions around low-income households as well. So there's an exemption to low-income households. In terms of the portway issue, we've done a lot of sensitivity testing on this. We've modelled a lot of data on this, and it's very clear if you take the portway movement out of the scheme, the compliance year moves to 2024. So if we did take it out, even if we lobbied the government, we still have this.
You have 30 seconds left,
ruling
Councillor. Thank you.
Around delivering compliant legal clean air as soon as possible. It's quite clearly the law of the land that we have to do this to comply with that High Court judgment and the responsibility that's been passed down to us on government. So I think it's really clear that whoever the administration was, we would be in the same position of having to introduce this scheme that does deliver legal compliance as soon as possible. And we're not only doing it because it's a legal duty, it's a moral duty as well that we're delivering on to clean up our air quality. So
can you draw to a close now then?
I think we're really stuck here in terms of what we can do around this one. So please vote against it.
I'd now like to call upon Councillor Thomas to speak on behalf of the Green Group. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And before I speak, I'd just like to comment that this is my last full council too, as I'm not seeking re-election as a Clifton councillor. It's been a privilege serving Clifton and the city for the last 6 years. And over this time, I've enjoyed working with councillors and colleagues from all political parties who I think have more in common than we sometimes like to admit. And as you also might be aware, the experience of being a councillor has only increased my enthusiasm for playing a full part in progressive community politics. This week's Bath's Clean Air Zone launched. That means older polluting vehicles will need to pay to enter a restricted zone. That's good news for the quality of the air in Bath and for the health of the people in Bath. Meanwhile, in Bristol, unless urgent action is taken, Client Earth have said in the last weeks that our air won't meet legal and safe standards until 2027. We're close to taking the action that's required to clean up Bristol's air, which is good news. Greens have challenged the delays in the process to get us to this point, but we've generally been satisfied with the rigour and expertise of the consultants who've done the modelling and the proposals. When Greens are unhappy with the rigour of the consultants engaged by the council in the past, we've challenged their detailed evidence and modelling, for example with Bristol Energy in 2015. We don't have that kind of detailed challenge from the Conservative in this motion. And the reason for that is, as Kai Dudd has said, is that the sensitivities show that the anticipated legal exceedances of NO2 on the Portway and the Hotwell Road will mean that clean air compliance is put back for at least a year. This air pollution matters. It affects the health of adults and children in my ward and across the city. It's responsible for 5 deaths each week in our city. So this action must be taken. I acknowledge that there may be some further modelling work to do on the knock-on consequences of the location of the boundaries of the clean air zone, particularly the case when new rat runs are created along the edge of the clean air zone, resulting in potentially raised levels of pollution in those neighbouring areas. And there may be additional mitigations also required there. But in terms of the current western boundary setting for the clean air zone, without evidence or reasoning as to why the consultants might have got this modelling wrong, the Green Group cannot support this motion.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to call upon Councillor Kent to speak on behalf of the Liberal Democrat Group. You have 3 minutes, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Given the time, I will try to keep it a lot shorter than 3 minutes. This is a difficult choice because we're trying to weigh up here the needs of different people of our city, because that's what governance is about. We've just seen the introduction of the Bath Clean Air Zone, as already has been discussed. Looking at the issue of the actual motion and what it requests, I do not think it an unreasonable request, particularly as a councillor of South Bristol. I've had residents contacting me, and I'm sure others have, concerned about how they're to get in particular to North Bristol and the Portway. And my concern actually is not necessarily only about their issues about getting there, but it's also about the residents who live in the communities near the clean air zone, which might then themselves become rat runs for additional traffic. I think that's a real issue there with the Portway. I think another concern we share about the Portway is the fact that, and admittedly, there's no votes to be gained in raising this one, but it is actually the overflow, the redirection route for when the motorway is closed, which we know is not that regular, but can occur once or twice a year. And then to be forcing potentially tens of thousands of people into a charging zone could present us with considerable legal problems. I can actually see the government potentially rejecting this element of the boundary, potentially because of that reason. I think what the motion asks is not unreasonable. And I think taking one more look at how we handle the Portway is reasonable. And I also think that the danger of additional rat running, additional pollution on the edges of the clean air zone is a real one, and I think has been fairly put by a few members here tonight. I'm not in any way attacking the members who view this in a different way. I think they've put fair and reasonable points. I think it's a difficult decision, but the majority of us certainly will be supporting the motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I would now like to call upon Councillor Weston. Would you like to respond to the debate as the mover of the motion? You have 3 minutes if you would like to. Thank you.
I'll try and be quicker, my Lord Mayor. Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone's contributions. Just want to say, first of all, we're not actually attacking the clean air zone itself. I think Councillor Thomas was the slight implication on that. You yourself said it's reviewing boundaries would be acceptable. We're reviewing one of them. We are genuinely fearful about its inclusion and the consequences of the inclusion. Councillor Dudd, thank you for your contribution. And again, thank you for the conversations we've had. I do find it very strange that when we essentially try and put a motion trying to bring cross-party support for the Chamber to do something, to lobby the government, that's a bad thing. Your party seems to talk about wanting to work collaboratively all the time. Is that only collaborative when it suits you? I may as well say that, since I'm pretty confident I know which way the vote is going at this stage. But I would like to thank everyone for their contribution. I do think the clean air zone on its current boundaries has a real problem for a lot of suburban areas in North Bristol and South Bristol, and it will cause problems. And if I may, my Lord Mayor, since this might be my last speech because of the May elections and all, can I just thank everyone for, it's been a wonderful ride, and let's move to the vote.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to move to the vote. The vote on the motion will be.
Lord Mayor, didn't I get a response as well? But it's okay.
Sorry.
Okay, don't worry. I'll let Kai. It's
I'm so
fine.
sorry. If you would like to respond,
No,
you're not on the order paper too. But if you would like the opportunity, no, please do. If you'd like to take the opportunity to respond.
I tell you what, let's let it finish early. It's okay. No, go ahead, Lord Mayor.
So we're going to argue about whether you want to speak or not. Would you like to take the opportunity to speak, Mayor? Okay, thank you. We will now move to the vote. The vote on the motion will be a named vote by way of a roll call. The names will be read out in alphabetical order. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor John Alexander.
Against.
Councillor Leslie Alexander.
For.
Councillor Beach.
Against.
Councillor Bowden Jones. Councillor Bradshaw.
Against.
Councillor Brain. Councillor Brooke.
Against.
Councillor Breckles.
Against.
Councillor Carey.
For.
Councillor Cheney.
Against.
Councillor Barry Clark.
Against.
Councillor Stephen Clark.
Against.
Councillor Clough.
For.
Councillor Comley.
Against.
Councillor Craig.
Against.
Councillor Chris Davies,
4.
Councillor Mike Davies, Councillor Denyer,
Against.
Councillor Dudd,
Against.
Councillor Eddy,
4.
Councillor Fodor,
Against.
Councillor Godwin,
Against.
Councillor Goggin,
Against.
Councillor Gollop,
4.
Councillor Galandris,
4.
Councillor Hance,
Against.
Councillor Hickman,
Against.
Councillor Hiscott,
4.
Councillor Holland,
Against.
Councillor Hopkins,
4.
Councillor Jackson,
Against.
Councillor Jammer,
Against.
Councillor Johnson,
Against.
Councillor Jones,
4.
Councillor Keane, Councillor Kent, Councillor Khan,
4.
Councillor Kirk,
Against.
Councillor Lake,
Against.
Councillor Lovell,
Against.
Councillor Massey,
Against.
Councillor Mead, Councillor Malias,
4.
Councillor Morris,
4.
Councillor Negus,
Against.
Councillor O'Rourke,
Against.
Councillor Pearce,
Against.
Councillor Phipps,
Against.
Councillor Pickersgill,
Against.
Councillor Courtley,
4.
Councillor Radford,
4.
Councillor Rippington,
Against.
Councillor Sargent,
4.
Councillor Shah, Councillor Smith,
Against.
Councillor Shah, who's against,
Against.
Councillor Smith,
4.
Councillor Thomas,
Against.
Councillor Threlfall, Councillor Tinknell,
Against.
Councillor Wellington,
Against.
Councillor Weston,
4.
Councillor Whittle,
Against.
Councillor Windows,
4.
Councillor Wright,
Abstain.
Councillor Rees, Mayor Rees, apologies,
Against.
Councillor Threlfall, Councillor Mead, Councillor Kent, Councillor Keane,
4. Sorry, you keep muting me. I keep trying to vote 4.
thank you, Councillor Keane, Councillor Mike Davies, Councillor Brain, Councillor Bowden Jones. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed. The results are as follows: 24, 37 against, 1 abstention, 3 apologies. The motion is not carried. Thank you very much indeed. Now, before we conclude this evening's meeting, I just wanted to read a roll call out of those councillor members who wish to be mentioned this evening. There are some councillors who are going to be standing down who would prefer not to be mentioned and thanked at this point. So I would just like to thank the following councillors for their service to the council and to the city. Councillor Abraham, Charlie Bolton, Nicola Bowden-Jones, Mark Brain, Tom Brooke, Barry Clark, Harriet Clough, Mike Davies, Mark Hickman, Anna Keane, Steve Jones, Jill Kirk, Jeff Lovell, Ollie Mead, Matt Malias, Ruth Pickersgill, Liz Radford, Jerome Thomas, Barry Threlfall, Estella Tinknell, John Wellington, Lucy Whittle and Mark Wright. There are a couple of other councillors who didn't want to be named, but I would like to extend my thanks from the city for all your service over the past years. That concludes this evening's meeting. Thank you to all councillors and all others for attending today's meeting. The next meeting of full council will be annual council meeting, and it will be held on the 20th of May following the elections. Thank you very much and good evening.